didn't hear it,
No,
but it is
but it
recording.
is there.
Thank you.
You get someone to be testing from side.
Let's take some good notes on this.
Never have me on the agenda again.
And then I'll go grab my. Yeah.
This presentation.
Go ahead and make sure you turn on your microphone so we can catch the recording. Thank you.
Scott, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So we know for the folks that are maybe listening in, we may have some technical difficulties. So I think we've got at least a version to function right now. So we'll move forward.
Let's give it a try.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's recording, so.
Recording?
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right, I'm gonna call the order. We have a regular city council meeting for April 9th, 2025. And if you can join me in the pledge of allegiance.
It's gonna pick up all the mic.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is the roll call, please?
Mayor Letts,
Here.
Council President McDougal,
Here.
Councilor Predin,
Present.
Councilor Ross,
Present.
Councilor Pellerin.
Here. Okay, thank you. Can I get an approval of the agenda, an amendments?
I move to amend the agenda to move visitor communication to come before presentations.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Is there any visitor communication?
There is Steve Swisher.
You wanna come up? Oh, who's back? Oh, yeah, no. What happens when it's on? Yeah.
No, you're all set. Stern bell.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve Swisher and I'm 69339 Oxhill in Colgate, just outside of your city limits.
On, but can you speak right into there?
And at this point, I'm here to talk about your urban growth, give a few comments about that. But relate just a little bit of history of that. This building, the building across the street, as well as the zoning that you will have to go through eventually as you add urban growth into your city limits and decide what to do with it. And so a lot of these comments will be relevant to your joint meeting that you just had a few minutes ago. So again, I'll try to be very succinct. But I am a retired school superintendent, came here in 1996. And with that, I retired from the sister school district, but worked throughout the state as a teacher of math and physics and a coach and an administrator. Rose to the level of incompetence as a joke here about being a school superintendent. And with that, during part of my stay in career, I served as director of apprenticeship and training for the state of Oregon, having been very involved with career technical education and those kinds of things as appointed by the governor and the labor commissioner at that time. So my comments will come together, but a little bit of history gives you a sense of where I'm coming from. Basically, as you're looking at your urban growth boundary and then deciding what comes in and then ultimately how you zone it regarding the kind of housing that's available. Right, moved here in a sister school district, superintendent. We have a problem with housing because the city didn't have a sewer. There's 800 people in the city limits. And at that particular point, our schools were just crowded as heck. My first year in 1996, we were renting 3 classrooms from the next door Baptist church. And we were on a real growth pattern at that particular time, so it was quite an issue. And for the teachers we were trying to hire and bring on board at that point, there's no place for them to live. As a school superintendent, I found a place, but my salary is at the top of the scale. And actually, even at that time, it was hard at the salary levels where they were around the state to find an appropriate place to live in town. So again, my encouragement and comments are, as you do your urban growth boundary, think about that workforce housing. I think it's critical to the survival of not only the schools, but the community. During the first visioning process that went on as part of here in Sisters, we said, guess what, affordable housing is really important. The ones who started 5 times, he rounded up a group from Aspen, Colorado, as well as a city councilor from Aspen. Came here, we had community conversations about it. And the problem has never changed since 1996 to right now. It's even more difficult, even though it's been discussed over that entire time. So I'm not suggesting it's the easy solution, but you do have the capacity within the city to decide how you zone, what areas you zone, and how to go about that. As a county planning commissioner, went through a variety of those kinds of things as chair of the planning commission a couple of years. Basically, we were still talking about the rural residential areas that were going on. And how do you use resource lands, non-resource lands, and the housing and those things. So again, this is a Central Oregon problem, and that's an Oregon problem in particular, but Sisters, I think, highlights it in all of that area. The second component that I want to briefly talk about the history right here. You're sitting in the old science room of Sisters Middle School there. And this was middle school next door. The library was the old Sisters Middle School. And originally, 1929 gym was built right back there, and the logo in the middle of that gym has been cut out, put in the new high school. The city and them had to help us after the county and the Forest Service worked together to find 221 acres that basically the county and Forest Service exchanged lands. So that the whole complex down for the high school, the elementary school, middle school sits on, it actually ended up being 261 acres. That was exchanged from the Forest Service to the county, and the county conveyed it to the school district for the site of the new high school. But of course, it was out of urban growth boundary, and we had to, at that point, annex that into the city. So we went through all of the processes you can imagine. With growth and no growth, kind of people kind of worried about that. And Sisters at that time.
And Steve, this is really fascinating. I'm really enjoying this. So we try to keep the public comment short. So
I understand. You know,
Thank you very much.
but as that came together, that whole piece, these zones were all commercial. This set at that time, that was commercial across the street, and the elementary school was commercial. When that property exchange started, then that's when the public facility zones came into place for here, where all of that property out there as well as converting all of these public facility zones. School district now has continued the whole vision and process, and they're looking to dispose of. I happen to be the budget committee chair of the school district, but are looking to dispose of that building in some manner so it's helpful for the taxpayers. My last comment is that this is a public service complex now. City, library district, we got spurred, even though the district still owns that for the moment, which is now called Park and Rec District. But at that particular point, there is a public interest in having taxes for schools, but also one of the favorite things I used to say is who mows the grass in town? How do we share, how do we work together? And this community has continued to get better at that over time, in my perspective. And so that building, I hope, doesn't just get, it can be dismantled because it's a historic thing. But hopefully it still fits into the complex of a community use. And that's my input to that. Even though, speaking as a school person, I hope the schools are able to get some benefit out of that direction, whether it's leasing and selling, renting, whatever. But I hope the city sees the importance of keeping this as a public service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, do you want to do something first? Okay. Mark Dickens.
Hi, Mark Dickens, resident of the City of Sisters. Most of you know me here. Congratulations to our new city council members and our new mayor. I am not here for any other reason out of this pure necessity. I had hoped my days of coming down here were over, and I'm trying to sell my property and move, and I would love to leave Sisters with some nice memories of maybe saving some trees and maybe assisting the community with shutting down that big monstrosity of a gas station. I am in a very difficult situation regarding the Deschutes County and the city's contract with Deschutes County as it relates to building permits and inspections and things like that. I'm sure the city has an agreement and memorandum of understanding or a contract. How the city is involved or how this is relevant just because of that agreement. This all stems from a dispute, a minor bit of remodel work that was done in 2015 by the previous owner to my house, Stephen Shaw. Folks may be familiar with him or not. This has been an almost 9-year dispute battle with Deschutes County, specifically the building official, Randy Scheid, that I would describe as highly unethical, abusive of his authority, acting outside his guidelines. And my very first meeting with him before Mr. Scheid, well, actually to this day, he's never stepped foot on my property, never inspected the property, but he threatened my house, said he would condemn it, declare it uninhabitable and condemn it. So that has set the tone for where things are. Now, again, how this is relevant to the city is because of the contract. I've been consulting with attorneys. They have said because I'm a resident of the City of Sisters and because my property resides here and because of this contract, the city does have some responsibility and unfortunately some liability. I'm trying to sell my house. This code dispute has clouded the title. There was a legal agreement reached by my attorney and the city council, Adam Smith, back in, I think, about 2018-19, that would have put an end to this. And it was a very simple solution. I performed, did everything I was required to do. And then this building official, who was just completely out of control, rogue, is not even applying the code in a manner that's consistent with state law. I verified this at the state level. He's now reneged on this agreement, and this dispute has dragged on. The county threatened my mortgage lender. They threatened to foreclose. I had to go to a federal bankruptcy court and file legal action, which stripped all the county's fines and liens away. I've been irreparably harmed financially. And I'm being put in a situation here where I'm going to have to be forced to file a lawsuit, which is going to be a very big, ugly, embarrassing, expensive lawsuit against Deschutes County and these individuals. And it's going to involve the city, unfortunately. It's going to drag the city into this whole thing. Jordan Wheeler knows a little bit about this. I talked to him a few months ago. I had a very, what I would describe as constructive meeting with Emmy and Scott the other day, and I kind of alluded to that, a little bit about this to them. But we're looking for a solution out of this. Again, I don't want to spend my final days here in this town suing the city of Sisters or dragging it into the litigation that the county has done. So what I'm asking, not going to get any more detail now that you get on with your business, but I would like a meeting with a representative from the city. I'm building documenting this now, I'm building a case here to kind of show, I think it would show good faith. If somebody from the council, the mayor, Jordan Wheeler, meet with me, and it will look good for your sake. You may want to bring in your attorney, Jeremy Green, who coincidentally is his office is representing Stephen Shaw, which is a real coincidence, who's tried to skate all responsibility for this, and he's the one that's responsible for this. So anyways, I'm here in good faith. I'd like to keep some dialogue going. There's a famous quote by Robert McNamara, "Wars start when people stop talking." So thank you very much, and I look forward to some response from the city, and maybe we can come up with a good civil resolution to this, and then I can leave town thinking I did some good for Sisters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Nobody from Zoom can.
Yeah, you can.
Should I try? Anyone on Zoom would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, no, please. I see none.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, well, next up is a presentation by Eric Strobel from Economic Development Center.
Okay.
Your Sisters Economic Development Update.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you move forward? Can you move your slides?
Yeah. Yep,
So you're
good.
good to go.
Cool, thank you.
Mayor,
Council,
Yeah,
thank you for
okay.
the opportunity to present tonight. I love this shot of Sisters. I don't know if you've all seen it. Explore Sisters has that, and we're nice enough to share it with me. So I think it's really cool.
So the relationship, City of Sisters and EDCO relationship, we're in year 2 of 3 of our contract. And at this time next year,
I'll be sitting
here with our CDO, John Stark,
Stark,
and we'll be
be,
wanting to make that go further. Hope so. I think it's been a great relationship so far. I think we're hitting a lot of the key elements that are listed here. I think collaboration is one of the main pieces of that, both with the city and then just with community and organizations around town.
Sisters, business organizations, C4C.
Just goes on and on. It's
such a collaborative community to work in, and I
enjoy
enjoy
it and love my job. I'm
Love
saying that. Community interest is improving. I'm going out a lot in the community and doing presentations, Rotary, Kiwanis, a couple of others. Kiwanis coming up again. They're always met with positivity. I want to thank the mayor for being on the local advisory board and on the EDCO board. And welcome Councilor Creedy to both of those boards.
Good to have you.
And I love having a city manager that's familiar with
Economic development. You have that experience, and that really helps. Sometimes it's hard to know what we do.
So
That's
very helpful to me. So I'm going to use the EDCO motto, the Move, Start, Grow theme, and kind of talk about some of the companies that I've been working with. So Move, regionally, we're down in our Move projects. It's been the last probably 2-3 years. Companies are just sitting tight. That's probably going to be even more so now. I think with the
kind of unsettling that's going on.
Sisters was fortunate to have BaseX expand Sisters.
And the city and I worked really hard on that.
Commissioner Air helped as well, and that was just a really successful project, and they're operating working in there. You can see the cleaning room right there. And they're the majority of those 46 employees, 51 employees that are coming from the move. The 11 and 11 and Bivvy are more likely what we will see, small owner operated companies, mostly because of our housing girdle. So good to have that. And we have some start projects. Bivvy is also a start project. Want to talk about Lazy Z. John, started his mead company a few years back. It's gone much better than he even anticipated, online and as a club, and all kinds of things. And he crunched the numbers recently for his tasting room event center, and he's going for it. So he's talking to Business Oregon about financing and also some private financing. So there, we have 4 employees there, which our goal in our strategic plan is 10. So we're getting there.
We're doing actually pretty well.
Eric,
Yeah.
sorry, what time period are we covering here?
A year.
One
One
year.
year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks
For that, appreciate it.
Grow is really where we take off. I mean, we've got some great companies
in town.
Personalized Nutrients, Sisters Coffee, Sisters Bakery, they're all adding employees. Most of those 14 employees. You've got Cascade Spirits, Holy Cacao, and Evangelist West, which are expanding and doing really well, but they're not really adding employees, which is fine. They're expanding their facilities, and that's good growth as well. I did put Metabolic in, they're not gone yet. They're still operating, and who knows how long they're going to operate.
They don't
have a solid timeline yet. And table setting for business. We've seen all of these in my monthly reports. Vanderpool, 2 successful boot camps, small business development center doing a lot more here. But I want to focus on Soul Blossom. So this is a new 0 to 3 date here, which we did not have in Sisters.
April is the owner, and
the vision implementation team has a subcommittee, child care subcommittee. And we had talked with April, and she was having some issues getting families to join on the Soul Blossom, mostly due to state funding being just kind of choked. For a lot of different reasons I won't go into, but we met with Representative Levy and talked about all those chokeholds and where she's experiencing issues. And soon after that all loosened up, and she got 2 grants. The families that were wanting to go to Soul Blossom received funding from the state, and she's got, I think, 10 or 11 families now. She had 3 for a long time. And so I don't know what magic Representative Levy did, but she did do magic, and we community totally appreciates it. So that's a really cool project. Oh, I wanted to mention the other. I did put a couple of things on there. Retail tourism. I'm working a lot in that space. I don't really have programs to help retail business, but I can connect, support. I can, help with events, whatever the case may be. So I've definitely done that. And then industrial land and buildings. Making sure that I'm on top of that and working with those owners to lease to good companies. Couple current future projects. Opportunity Knox is a business support group, a peer-to-peer business support group. We've been around 25 years. Great organization. I was a facilitator for 3 years for a manufacturing group and enjoyed it. They want to do something in Sisters, and I suggested a retail group. Given the headwinds we've read about and heard about. I think it's great timing. So we're going to do a mixer next week with Opportunity Knox here in town, and invite people and see if they want to build one of these support groups. So that'd be exciting. I hope you should be commercial. Industrial lands definitely want to be in on that, and part of that, I'll make sure to do it. Strategic plan check-in next week. With our advisory board. Then we're gonna have a May business roundtable. And then you just want to get the discussion started on local incentives. You know, we have enterprise zone. We have the Deschutes County Forgivable Loan Fund, which is great, but they're only trading sector. So that cuts a lot of out in town. So, you know, things like job training, reimbursement. I think at one time the city had a facade improvement program. I don't know. I just heard that. Expedited permitting would be awesome for some companies. You know, we contract with the county for building permits, and sometimes, you know, they've got a long lead. And so it would be great to be able to expedite those permits for a company that needs to get in, as BaseX did. And the county worked us great on that. It was awesome. But get into a space to start functioning. And perhaps some decreased fees in some areas. Just start a discussion. And thank you, Councilor Frieden, for your suggestion on a Sisters Angel group. That's intriguing to me. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. We have a lot of resources in this town, and we have businesses that want to grow. So I don't know what that looks like exactly, and how hard that is to get off the ground and maintain, but I'm going to enlist our venture capitalist Ryan Vieira, who has tons of fun experience, and get him on board, and perhaps do the introductory meeting to this idea, and have him talk about how do you develop a fund, how do you keep it maintained and moving. So we'll work on that, and then we'll have a fall event that will raise awareness and some membership coming up. So job growth in Sisters, we have talked about the fact that in a 2-year period during COVID, Sisters had the most jobs per capita of any city in Central Oregon. And it also bodes well for that was 2019 to 2021. And it also bodes well for 22 and 23, where we're number 1 or number 2 in growth for 100 people or growth capita. So that's impressive. I don't know if the region knows that. I did send this out to all of the EDCO directors in the other cities, just so they saw that.
Did you highlight that one column when you sent it to them?
Yeah. Yeah. One interesting thing for you can see in Prime Mill, during the pandemic, middle of the pandemic, everybody had negatives. And Prime Mill had 309 jobs that they added. So probably Facebook, right? And that Apple. So never heard. No, yeah, who is that? But those are cool numbers to see. And then you probably the first to see this. I don't think it's out yet, but our largest employers. Not a lot of surprise here. The newbie BaseX Sisters is already on there. That was quick. So I'll leave you with that to look at, and I will take any questions.
This isn't a question, but I am familiar with opportunity knots, and that's really exciting. And I love the idea of a retail support group. Love to get an invitation for a mixer instead of.
Yeah, for sure.
I like mixers too.
Okay.
The question, like an opportunity. The question that they're in is, will they share, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying they won't, but that has to happen. You have to be vulnerable. You have to share your financials with everybody. You gotta be able to do that. So we'll get a bead on that, I hope, in this mixer to see if people are into that. And then at the roundtable, I'm gonna check on the trade sector if they would like to do a group, which I think they will share.
I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, seriously, I mean, if you bring that and people are interested and want help, and then can take up the opportunity.
Yeah, and I have a great facilitator for the retail group. business goes, shoes is ready to roll, so, so we're kind of ready to do it. Just if there's.
So.
Is the Sisters Makers as an organization still existing?
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
and we plan to stay existing, just in a different format. I can see us being, partner driven more than we were, we were already. Partners, but we're gonna have to rely a little bit more on the Sisters Creative Collective is one, School of Ranch, I think is another one that would work really well because their classes are already maker oriented. And if we can bring them to Sisters and hold them in the makers building, no matter who has the lease. I think that's
good support.
And then I'm really acting as support and a resource for makers. I got a call today from somebody that has. Wants to
Work on it.
So
I think we're out there.
It's not where I wanted to be. It's not as robust as I thought it would be, but we'll keep it going and also looking for somebody that might want to jump in there part-time and help with events, classes, something like that. So we held, we have three classes, 2 boot camps this year. So I think summer we're not going to do any classes just because everything is like, you know, everybody's flying all over the place.
The board's still active, right? I mean,
Yeah.
great. I mean, that's important to have that leadership, which is to give directions, to you, I guess. Well, until you find that, you know, that it takes a real niche person to kind of slide it in there. The, you know, the person that left obviously has some really special talents that overlap that whole Weaver's umbrella. So hopefully we can find somebody that, even if they want to just do it part-time, right, that would be a start, and maybe they would just fall in love with what they're doing more.
Well, I'm happy to hear that it still exists, and it's entirely possible with the proper guidance, and I know they're gonna have that it may emerge actually stronger in the end with a greater umbrella of contributors.
Right.
Because I always had the feeling, and this is not a slam, because I like the person quite a bit, it was really an individual's vision that was driving it. And I think that's, when you have that sole source of vision and they depart, sometimes groups just collapse.
Right.
And the fact that it hasn't, and the fact that it's continuing to work and bring people in, hopefully, is a good sign, and it's a good sign for this community. So keep it up, make sure that they get enough scaffolding underneath them during this interim period.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much, Eric. We really appreciate it. We like you too.
Oh, well, wait.
Well,
Is that the royal?
That's the royal we.
I kind of love them a little.
All right, next up, we have an Arbor Day proclamation with MHU, our associate planners, talk trees.
I'm going to make one announcement. It seems like we're recording off of my computer, so people that are further away from my computer, please speak into your microphones.
Oh.
So it picks up for Zoom. Thank you.
God bless you.
So I'm gonna bring you the packet. I'm just
Oh,
going
I can do
to-
it.
Just to be clear, if I'm speaking into this microphone, so. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight City of Sisters as a Tree City USA. We've been designated as a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation for 18 years. So we just graduated high school, woo! And what that means, what a Tree City means is that as a municipality, we have demonstrated an ongoing commitment to preserving and efficiently managing our urban forest by maintaining the urban forestry board, having a community tree ordinance, which in our case also includes the heritage tree ordinance, which we adopted in 2021. We have the creation and adoption of the urban forest management plan. We're one of the only few communities in Oregon that has that kind of plan and is designated as a tree city. We are also required to spend at least $2 per capita on our urban forestry. And we also every year observe Arbor Day with the annual tree planting event, and we recite the official Arbor Day proclamation. So for this year, we're planning to have an Arbor Day community tree planting event on Friday, April 25th. It will kick off at Creekside Park at 10 a.m. and anyone is welcome to join us. So far, we have plans to plant around 40 seedlings in an area that's southeast of the new roundabout. If you're driving out of town, heading to Bend, and you look to your right, you'll see this really wide sidewalk, and there's a lot of open dirt area, so that's where we're going to be planting the trees. I plan to have some boundary fencing, at least on the corner closest to the roundabout, to help keep kiddos where they're supposed to be. And I'm hoping to have 30 to 40 attendees this year, and in recent years, we're averaging 15, give or take, so hopefully we see a bigger turnout, and if not, I think we'll just have more trees to plant. And also this year, we were lucky to get some grant money from the Oregon Community Trees Organization. We applied for that grant and got about $1,150. And so we're using these funds to purchase the tree seedlings, some giveaway tote bags that will have some seed packets and other educational materials and give away to people who attend, as well as some equipment that we can reuse for years to come, such as the shovels, gloves, trowels. And I provided a financial impact statement in my staff report. The numbers gone up a little bit just to accommodate for soil and mulch that we need to buy. But if you have questions about the cost of previous years or anything else, I'm happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I would appreciate it if the mayor could read the proclamation tonight.
Not questions.
My only question is, you're gonna have a watering can?
I think we'll have some watering cans.
Like we've had in the
Might
past,
have a
the
truck
kids
with
like
a-
those.
Yeah. Water in some way.
Truck with a
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to
On a related topic, being a Tree City, I noticed we have a Tree City USA flag that's really tattered. And I think it's right over there by Dutch Brothers or something on that pole. Anyway, we can get another one of those.
I'm glad you asked. We just got a new one this year. So we will steam it, make it pretty, and get it up there.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing it up.
Did you hear it?
No.
Time for Arbor Day. All right, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, as well as in the city of Sisters. And whereas trees are healthy for salmon and steelhead because they reduce stormwater runoff and lower water temperature in our creeks and rivers. And whereas ponderosa pines and other trees are a critical part of the unique character of Sisters. And whereas in honor of its Tree City USA status, the city will host an Arbor Day tree planting celebration with local sister students at Creekside Park to inspire the next generation of stewards. Now, therefore, as mayor of the city of Sisters, I, Jennifer Letts, hereby declare the 25th day of April 2025 to be Arbor Day in the city of Sisters. I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to protect and plant trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Here. Well proclaimed.
Yeah, hug a tree.
That's not get carried away.
Yeah. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thanks, Emily.
Always take an exciting legacy for our community, and let's segue straight into
The fun stuff.
cutting the trees down.
Yeah, I'll share as soon as we get through this part.
Yeah.
Yes, is he already pulled that? Oh, has he not pulled
Every
that?
time.
I'm sharing this one.
If I don't get a meeting, we won't.
Yeah. Next up in council business is a public hearing. For ordinance 543.
Did we do consent
Oh, I'm
agenda?
sorry,
Okay.
Sorry.
it's new format, it's. Yeah. Apologize, consent agenda, got a motion to.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, I have a motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Sorry,
Question.
real quick, typo on the term for Tom Durst for the budget committee. to expire year 3025.
No, it's our new.
I know, he's a good volunteer.
It's really hard to find budgets.
And we're trying to cut down on the cost of the curriculum. Good job.
Okay, just that typo, I think he'd appreciate it. It's good.
Consent agenda as amended.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Three
I got
times.
it.
Yes.
You should have brought that up. You should have brought that up after the meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're on to public hearing for ordinance 543, defensible space. We have Matt Martin, our principal planner. And let's see, do I want to start with the script or does it have the introduction first?
You can start with the script.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I'm gonna do a little bit of reading here because it's the public hearing, so, patience. All right, this is a hybrid meeting. Attendees may participate in person or via Zoom. If you get disconnected from the meeting, use the same link to enter the meeting. Every time you speak, please identify yourself by name and address. During discussion, the mayor will call on city councilors, so there is a minimum of talking over each other. If you have no comments, say none when your name is called. All votes will be by roll call. So this is the time set aside for a public hearing on city file TA 25-01, an application for text amendments in the Sisters Development Code to implement defensible space standards for new development in the city of Sisters submitted by the city of Sisters. The hearing is now called to order. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. Staff will make the presentation. Entry of additional correspondence received into the record. Applicant opportunity to make a presentation. Opening the public hearing for testimony. Testimony in support of the proposal, testimony in opposition of the proposal, and a neutral testimony in that order. Applicant opportunity for rebuttal. Questions of staff, if any, by the council. Close public testimony, portion of the hearing, discussion and recommendation by the council. Well, wait. Okay, all right, testimony will be accepted in person and remotely via Zoom. If you would like to speak, please provide your testimony after you are called. If you do not wish to provide testimony, please say no testimony after you are called. Any questions should be directed to me as the mayor. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record and please speak clearly and loudly to ensure testimony is heard. This hearing is being recorded. Callers will be muted after their testimony concludes. At my discretion, I may limit testimony to 3 minutes per person. I would encourage those wishing to speak to keep testimony concise and relevant to the issue before us this evening. It is encouraged to simply agree with the point made by another person instead of remaking that point. During the page. For the deliberations, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the council must use in making a recommendation. All testimony and evidence must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulations that the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Testimony that is not directed towards applicable or potentially applicable approval criteria, even if a strong point, is ultimately not relevant. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the land use board of appeals based on that issue. Disclosures at this time, I will ask if any counselor has any conflicts of interest. If so, please disclose the nature of the conflict and whether the member believes the conflict will preclude the member from effectively participating in these proceedings. All right, Councilor Connor,
No conflict.
Councilor Ross,
None whatsoever.
Councilor Creedon,
Absolutely not.
Councilor McEwen.
No conflicts and I plan to participate.
Okay, I will say that, I am co-owner of a business that does wildfire mitigation consulting, in Central Oregon. I do not, personally believe I have a conflict, if anybody feels to be opposite of that, don't say that I don't.
I think you should participate.
I think you should too.
Okay, all right.
Why should we have all?
I mean, I can, yeah, all right. honestly could be bad for business because it's in code, then, you know, what are we needed for, right? Does any person in attendance desire to challenge participation of any member of the council? Okay. All right, staff may now present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councilors, those in attendance here in the room and online. I'm Matthew Martin, Principal Planner of City of Sisters Community Development. I want to acknowledge I'm joined here by Jeff Fuller, Fire Marshal with Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District, as well as in attendance are Chief Tony Pryor and Community Fire Specialist Stephen Lord, acknowledging that they've been not only partners in the development of the draft code amendments, but also are going to be an integral part of the administration of the code provisions as drafted. So again, what we have before you is file number TA 2501, package of text amendments to the Sisters Development Code to implement defensible space standards for new development. My goal and purpose of my presentation tonight is to supplement the staff report that was provided as part of the meeting packet. That includes an overview of the project as well as the actual text of Ordinance 543 that would enact the proposed amendments. So I want to provide a brief background, a summary of the code amendments, planning commission's recommendation, and then the next steps for consideration by the council. We want to be brief in the spirit of time as well as opportunity for additional testimony. What brings us here has been a consistent commitment by City Council through providing additional wildfire protective measures and mitigation measures here in the community. And this one in particular is approving or adopting defensible space standards into our development code to address those risks and impacts of wildfire. The development of the proposed amendments has been we've looked at a variety of resources, but the primary resources have been, as listed, the City of Ashland standards that have been in place since 2018. City of Ashland has been known city or statewide as a leader in wildfire mitigation measures and protective efforts to provide resiliency within the community, both leading into and perhaps after the event of a wildfire. Also consulted the draft defensible space standards created by the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office. That was an effort and requirement of implementation of Senate Bill 762, passed by the state legislature a few years ago. In addition, at the direction of City Council at prior work sessions was to consult the recommendations and research done by the Insurance Institute of Business and Home Safety and a variety of standards that they, through their research, have made recommendations for communities to consider in implementation. And what we found, I mean, to get to the chase a little bit, we found a lot of overlap, not only in these resources, but also the variety of other resources that are available through NFPA, Firewise community standards, among other resources and expertise that are in the nation. And while, again, a lot of overlap, there are the nuances and differences. And so what we've looked at is the resources that are identified as those primary and most relevant to our community for consideration. But also built into these standards is a direct relationship to the type of vegetation that is allowed or to be managed on properties. And so what we consulted was a local resource of that was produced by OSU Extension with their partners, a publication called Fire Resistant Plants for Home Landscapes. This was a document that has previously been published, but was most recently updated in 2023. So thought to be the most current available information on what those plant species are that are most fire resistant, or conversely, what may be most flammable, to take extra precaution in managing the landscape. So we've been discussing this topic for over in excess of a year with the introduction and other topics But the actual earnest effort in developing the code criteria was implemented or initiated in October of last year. And so over several work sessions with not only the council, but the planning commission, we worked to refine the proposal to what's before you today. So what are those amendments? We'll just start with the applicability. City council found it most important to apply the standards to the entirety of the city. Now there were other efforts and direction perhaps from in relationship to the statewide wildfire risk map that may implement standards piecemeal throughout the community, but for overall protection of the community, council provided that direction and wisdom to apply it citywide to be equitable and provide the maximum protection through the defensible space standards. Now these would be applicable to new development, so not existing built environments, but rather new projects that come before us from larger scale master plan, subdivision, land and other land divisions, as well as site plan reviews for commercial projects, but also applicable to those individual lot developments. So if you're building a single family dwelling, there are provisions here that would be applicable and reviewed at the time of that building. So new buildings, new structures, but also we consider new development to be the addition to a structure, including additional square footage of living space or additions to decks that exceed 200 square feet or more. And then noting that there's an additional submittal requirement in review process for land division and site plan reviews, and that's in the form of fire prevention and control. Pause here for a quick moment to note that as through the refinement of the proposed development code standards, we do find provisions that do need to be addressed and improved. And I do want to offer, and I did provide a printed excerpt from the draft amendments, but what I found was that the applicability of the standards, it wasn't clear that these standards would be applicable to the defensible space area, is that 30-foot buffer around the structures. You know, again, through refinement and movement of different code provisions, I found that this explicit description of where it's applicable, the 30 feet, had been lost or wasn't as clear. So staff recommends adding the sentence that's on the screen, but also included in the handout I provided you, to be included in the adopted ordinance. So as I noted, the defensible space standards and the vegetation management is directly related to an adoption of a prohibited flammable plant list. I do want to note that the flammable plant list is not included in the text amendments to the development code, but instead through a separate adoption process that's later in your agenda, through adoption of a resolution instead of ordinance and code criteria in our development code. This provides opportunity to be flexible and review that periodically to ensure that we have the most up-to-date, most current, and most applicable list to the City of Sisters. So the list that's included in the resolution and on the slide was developed through looking at a variety of resources, again, looking to City of Ashland for guidance, as well as other plant list materials and resources, such as one that was produced by Project Wildfire, a local wildfire mitigation group. But we also, as noted in the staff report, we used the term collaborated with representatives OSU Extension. I do want to, I'm sensitive to the terminology. We did consult with them and collaborated in connotes that they were integral in development of the list. Now, we want to acknowledge that they don't have ownership of the list that we do, but rather we did work with Amy Jo Datweiler and Ariel Cohen to get guidance and feedback on the list that we developed. They were a valuable resource in the development of the list. So on to the developable space standards. What are the meat of what we're doing here? So it's in two prominent zones, we'll call them for this purpose. The initial immediate zone, the 0 to 5 feet adjacent to any structure, would require removal of all dead and dying vegetation on the property. So that not only would apply in the 0 to 5 feet, but the entirety of the defensible space area. But within that 0 to 5 feet, we're required to remove all vegetative material adjacent to the structure. So no remaining vegetation, except for the presence of significant trees. We define significant trees to be any tree 8 inches in diameter at breast height or DPH.
Would you like questions on this particular piece?
That's at the
Discretion
discretion of the
of the
mayor, either during the presentation or later.
Madam Mayor.
And if you have a quick clarifying question.
Yeah, a quick clarifying question. We did have a letter from a gentleman who, I think is doing some construction on Woodlands. Asked about we build some plants, low shrub plants next to a building that's constructed with, say, cement board siding that is relatively non-combustible. I'd like to kind of hear what the thinking is on something like that. Do we look to allow that? Do we look to allow that on a case-by-case basis, or do we just say no? And I'm kind of looking to our fire professionals as much as anything for their opinion.
Yeah, I think there's some different things to look at. One important thing to take into consideration when you're looking at siding is the placement of windows and where windows are placed with vegetation, if vegetation's there.
Good point.
Yeah, I can't speak to the actual BTUs that it takes to break a window, but it's pretty in the 200, 250 range of a BTU coming off a plant, which is not very much to come off of dry vegetation. And the window is the weakest link in the side of a house with siding, so. When you have vegetation even next to hard plank boards, you still have windows there typically in your siding of your house, so you gotta take that into consideration also.
Thank you.
When you're looking at that.
That's actually quite helpful.
And although it's built into the proposed amendments would include exception opportunities to accept from or vary from the provisions depending on specific conditions or elements of a proposal. So that could be building design, materials used, other on-site factors that aren't contemplated
Whereas
generally by.
two buildings close to each other might not have windows on that side, this adjacent. In order to create some level of privacy. Yeah. But it was a good answer, because I was trying to think, well, what's on combustible siding? Thank you.
Further, not only vegetation, but looking for no combustible materials, man-made or natural, within the 5 feet, and that includes fencing material. So no wood fencing within the initial 5 feet. You can have a fence that would connect to a structure, but that portion of the fence adjacent to and within that first 5 feet needs to be of a fire resistant or non-flammable material, metal, fiberboard, other.
So Matt, under combustible materials, are we including residential propane tanks, or is it because they're fireproof, if you will? A bit with the metal, does that make a difference?
Yeah, I think, it's intentional. We don't have a definition of combustible or produced a list. We have recommendations of, or to include, but not limited to. But I think when we're thinking about combustibility or combustible materials, we may be wanting to look at it in the inverse and what is not combustible. And so I think for the purposes of this discussion, I believe a propane tank would be considered a potentially combustible element of a structure.
I've seen those.
But I want to acknowledge that absent some additional research, we have briefly anticipating this question, we have researched or do have some information on the IBHS recommendations for propane tanks, and also other provisions coming from the Oregon State Fire Marshal, which requires all propane tanks to be 5 feet from a structure. So we need to remember that this is one element of a layered cake of regulations that would apply to a structure or a property. So we have development, we have building code, we have fire code provisions that would also come into effect.
I would add to the propane tanks, the tanks themselves are not combustible, they're metal. But what's inside of them is combustible, which is liquid propane. And it's when the heat source is put onto that tank is when it builds pressure inside, causing it to vent. And when that vents, and there's an ignition source, then that's a torch. And depending on where that is next to your building, could be on your building, could be on the trees. So when you're considering propane tanks, it's really how can we eliminate the combustibles that are around that tank to help eliminate the heat source that goes on that tank to keep it from building pressure. So, and that is gravel, dirt, pavers, concrete, those type of products.
Follow-up question, just with it as written, do you feel comfortable with the way it's written, and we don't have to worry about that specific combustible source at this time because of the other layers of fire prevention and mitigation?
Yeah, I feel comfortable as long as we're addressing that combustible space around those tanks, right? We're not putting arborvitaes next to them to screen propane tanks. We're using metal fencing or concrete, as something.
Oh,
But I think what I heard, sorry, I think that we're kind of taking this down a long road, for being in the middle of their presentation, but we had a conversation about this earlier today, and so what I'm hearing though is if I were to build a new house today, I would be putting my propane tank at least 5 feet away from the house. So it's already outside of our 0 to 5. Is that correct? Say it real clear?
Yes.
Based on other things besides our code. It's outside of the City of Sisters code, but it's another piece of code that's followed by developers.
Correct, that's how I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
That's all it did.
All right, continue.
Moving on from the 5 feet, then we have the addition of the intermediate zone, the additional area out to 30 feet on the property, or to the extent that you have control out to 30 feet, because there will be areas that are on the other properties, and these would be only applicable to those areas on your property. So limiting that no new listed flammable plants would be allowed within the 30 feet area. If you do have existing listed flammable trees, those can be remain as drafted, but requiring a 10-foot canopy separation, as well as a 10-foot clearance from any structure and any chimney outlet if present on that structure. Also requiring the maintenance of ladder fuels and spacing of the lowest limbs of any tree. Our limit as proposed is 8 feet, or at a minimum of 1/3 of the overall height of the structure. Meaning that if it's a smaller tree, we don't want to limit up to 8 feet and compromise the health of the tree by going too high. Continuing on with existing fire resistant trees, we do have a similar 10-foot clearance from any chimney outlet. But with these fire resistant trees, they're allowed to encroach closer to a structure than the more flammable species. But we want to make sure that there's a clear separation of any of those branches, leaves, and foliage from the structure itself. But the branches can encroach towards the structure and within the 10 feet or even 5-foot area. As for listed flammable shrubs, asking for a 5-foot clearance from any building, and that's not only the base, but actually the plume, if you will, of the shrub. And so the base would certainly be outside the 5 feet, but we're looking for that actual additional growth to be beyond the 5 feet as well. And then separation between the bushes themselves, so that it's not one large flammable element running across the landscape, but the separation provides that limitation to ignition from one shrub to the next. And then management of the understory, or what's commonly referred to as ladder fuels. Those are grasses or shrubs that are located on the ground and below any trees. We want to make sure that those are limited to the clearance of 3 times the height of the vegetation to the lowest limb. Provide the separation and limit the flame length of that shrub so that it doesn't reach up into the canopy of the tree and start running across the canopy or the landscape with the canopy fire. And then lastly, other provisions in there, aside from vegetation management, is that it's addressing roofing material. That any new roof that's a new build or replacement in excess of 50% needs to be a Class A fire resistant roofing material. That's your composition, asphalt, shingle, tile, metal roofs, among others. And then to Councilor Ross's question earlier about are there elements that or opportunities to accept or not implement some of these measures. Built into the code are exceptions under certain or special circumstances, given the subject property, the building materials used, the presence of wetland or floodplain or other opportunities or values of maintaining native vegetation or other identified vegetation. Also want to note that the package isn't limited to the new provisions, but also some changes to other chapters of the code. These are primarily oriented at not substantive, but rather providing reference to the new code provisions so that they're not lost or overlooked when folks are interfacing with these chapters of the development bureau. Now, noting the planning commission, they conducted a public hearing on March 20th, and at the conclusion of the hearing, had a unanimous recommendation to approve the amendments as drafted. And so for the council tonight, we're conducting a public hearing. There's opportunities procedurally with the public hearing to either close the public hearing and deliberate, or continue the public hearing in its entirety to another date certain, close the oral record, and leave the written record open. So I just want to note that those are your options. And then looking for on a decision is either to approve as drafted, approve with amendments, or deny as drafted. So with that, here for any questions that you have.
All right, we're gonna move on
Well,
to.
to questions of staff, you already know questions?
No, we're on correspondence.
We're on
Our correspondence, thank you.
correspondence
I
first.
can't read.
Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in our agenda materials?
No additional correspondence.
Okay. All right, we can move on to questions of staff. At this time, do any councilors have any questions for staff? And then, do you want me to do one at a time or just jump in? What? Councilor Pellerin.
Yeah, oh, thank you, yes. So with the exception of the significant trees not having to be removed within the 5 feet. It was unclear to me that do the significant trees still have to follow some of the pruning requirements like around the chimneys and the heights and things like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that the clearance standards from structures and other trees, as well as the ladder fuel. Acres.
Okay, and then if somebody chooses to add a deck and it is over 200 square feet, then does their entire property have to follow these standards, or just around that deck?
So as drafted and as interpreted by staff, it would be only applicable to that addition area. So it'd be a 30-foot buffer around the addition. The idea or notion is that it could be and maybe a extensive and expensive proposition to apply defensible space to the entirety of the property. So we're finding that any implementation of the defensible space is an improvement on the conditions. But certainly that's under the purview of the council.
Thank you.
I have not, believe it or not.
I think it's something.
I do have
Yeah.
a question, and it may come up during deliberation, so it's a little concerned about what you just said. I think that when we talked about this earlier, I kind of came away with the impression in one of our work sessions that would apply to the entire property and not just the area of expansion, so maybe something, and I at least want to have respect when we get to that point.
Okay.
So question, I asked all my questions earlier today. Very good review with Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, all right, couple then. I thank you very much for working so hard on this. For one thing, we started this process, a couple of years ago, we were waiting for the state really to give us code. That did not happen, we directed staff to produce the code, which is an enormous lift for staff. And, a lot of expense taken on the city to do that as well, so I just really want to reiterate that, thank you to the staff and. Which the state could have been a little more expedient, and I don't know when that. Yeah, I'm glad that we moved in there, let's just say it kind of worked out, so. I do have some questions, starting with the, in the. Part of code 1.3.300, where it's just definitions. Under fire resistant plants. First sentence says fires, plants that are not listed on the prohibited flammable plant list. And I think that, I would honestly just like that sentence removed. Everything below it is fine. I think that there's really kind of three types of plants. I think there are flammable plants, prohibited flammable plants. I think there's fire resistant plants, and then there's just a bunch of plants in between that are, depending on the weather or how they're maintained, plant. I think fire resistant plants, have certain properties to them, bark, or they just live in an area of a lot of fires, so they do have some protections, and I think they're kind of their own class. And I think that's what the OSU document really speaks to more of the fire resistant plants. So I think just in that definition, just removing that first sentence, you just clean that up. Because I don't think it's one or the other. Does that make sense, or is that, we have to deliberate this, yeah, but that's just, a concern I had in there. Oh, yeah, it's, keep going. Thank you. It's a definition. All right, and then when I was reading through this, I was looking for two things. One was just obviously the content. The accuracy, the clarity, and also I was trying to read it as if I was a developer or a homeowner, does this make sense to me? Obviously for the people of our community, we want it to read well, we also want it for staff to read well, so that you're not having to field 20 questions every day and not have to take on that burden as well, so. I found overall that it was a little bit, a little jumbled. And it felt like in your presentation, you did a really great job in that. I almost wondered if it would have been more succinct too. And I know code's different and I'm not a code expert, so I will say that, but if it was just broken out by zone and what you can and can't do in each zone, I think it would be easier, because I felt it was jumping a little bit back and forth. Sometimes I was like, well, wait, is this 0 to 5 or 0 to 3 we're talking about, so just as trying to put my hat on as Georgian citizen, is that it's gonna really well with me to understand. That was kind of one thing that jumped out to me. Some specific things, let's see, 3.7.300. Section B, defensible space area standards, number 1, all standing dead and dying vegetation must be removed from the property except when considered ecologically beneficial, so. I mean, I have some ideas of what that might be, but who decides that? Is something ecologically beneficial? I think, the first thing that pops in my head is a snag. Obviously, snags are wonderful on forest for habitat. Snags usually don't really have a place inside of the community, because they fall on things, they catch fire, they produce a lot of embers and sparks and things like that, so. That was kind of what came to mind when I read that. So is there any thought specifically on what would fall under ecologically beneficial, and then who would make that decision?
So if you touched on one example that comes to mind, a snag that's it's now a nesting site for birds or other animals, or those down vegetation that provide habitat for ground level animals along the creek, stream bank or wetland restoration project that you may have, or the presence of those materials that it does make some or provide some value to the natural ecosystem ecology to maintain that. We would be looking for some level of expertise that can make that argument, because we are not ecologists or biologists, so it would need to be strongly justified or supported by evidence.
And is that addressed in our other code regarding, our other codes regarding, live material? Yeah, we have a standard in our. I didn't read the whole code, so. The city, so, we have code for trees and other things, I'm just curious.
It doesn't necessarily speak to this particular kind of element of retention or removal or consideration.
Okay, I also, so. Thank you for being patient there. In regards to the 0 to 5 street to the 0 to 5 foot zone, and with the exception of the unseen trees that are over 8-inch DBH. I feel like that needs to be not written into the code. I think that anything within that zone needs to be expected to be removed, and then that could be brought to the city's attention if there is an issue with that. I mean, I know there's lots of places in here that mention that, there are opportunities to talk to the city and fire professionals about whether something really necessary or leave. But I'm feeling like, I just feel like that 0 to 5 zone needs to just be free of all vegetation, period. Unless there is a real good case. I don't want that kind of codified. I think that can just stay there. It's kind of what I'm getting at, or I'm not comfortable with that, I should say.
So can I interject?
Yes.
So I want to just procedurally through the public hearing and the decision-making process, I want to make sure that we're not leading into deliberations at this point, because your points are duly noted, but perhaps those are opinions of you. So I don't want to stop the dialogue.
Sure, okay, and sometimes I bring up things just that you might have some feedback that will, that clarify it tonight.
Yeah, so my response to that, to an answer or provide an answer is that's certainly a consideration for the council's policy decision. I think throughout all of this, as we consider the compromise and the competing interests for the built environment, the maintenance of existing tree cover, other existing native vegetation, that we're trying to strike a balance here, and there will be concessions or other again, competing interests, and so we need to see what's the greatest benefit to the community, and so that's where we look to you as the policymakers to massage and craft this in the vision that you have for the community.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So is the trees with 8-inch DBH within the 0 to 5 feet, is that from the IDHS standards?
No.
Okay.
So only that. So originally, and look into other communities, Ashland does allow fire resistant vegetation within the 5-foot ignition zone or initial 5-foot area. Again, look into the other guidance and stronger provisions. So going above and beyond, because none versus some is a greater protection. There's no doubt about that. So this is the preservation of significant trees within the defensible space area in either 30 or within the 5 feet is again striking that balance of recognizing the value of other values of tree canopies, as well as that the trunk and the bark of the tree is not the most flammable elements of the tree. And so if we're looking to maximize its fire resistance, we'd be looking to, while maintaining it, would be looking to limb up the vegetation from ground as well as from that horizontal clearance from the structure.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to, sorry.
I just think.
Yeah, I would like to kind of table it to get to discussions. I have some thoughts on it, but I think it falls into the deliberation area. And I'm interested in having it then, which is appropriate to me. I do have a question on the roofing section C and the, it's a clarification question. I'm not sure what 50% or more of a structure's roof area is replaced within a 5-year period. Does that mean like I do 10% one year, 10% the next year, 20, that, the 5-year period part of it confuses the daylight out of this poor man. I'm not sure why we wouldn't just say that 50% of the roof is replaced. It has to be, you have to do the entire roof of Class A roofing. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, so I think it's that cumulative element or that you're trying to avoid the piecemeal replacement that, you know, over an extended period of time, you replace the entire roof by just doing portions.
I figured that was your intent.
5-year
I'm not sure it comes up quite that way. So I don't know how to change it, I'll be real honest with you, but I said, well, maybe what they mean is, but if I take 6 years, then I guess it doesn't apply.
So there could be opportunity to remove that
Just a thought, we
that
can.
timeframe, or rather just the cumulative that may be more challenging to monitor.
I think the goal is to ensure it happens with someone replacing a roof. And how we can best do that, I don't know, but I thought that was from a perspective, if I were a citizen looking at it, I wasn't really sure what it is in that.
I think it's also considering the lifespan of a roof.
Yes.
That's after 5 years, you're starting to kind of work your way back to.
Most of the time, if you do one part of one group, you do the whole.
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
mean, that's just like, it just makes sense. Right?
Alright,
I was thinking the same thing.
okay, I can, yeah,
Yeah.
any more questions for staff?
So,
Okay, I think most of mine are probably more comments than questions, so. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Martin. Okay, public testimony. We will now invite members of the audience to provide testimony when your name is called. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record before proceeding with your testimony. For those attending via Zoom, we will conduct a roll call to see who wants to provide testimony at the conclusion of testimony by those attending in person. All right, we will begin with proponents of the proposal. Do we have any online or in person?
None in person. Should someone online want to speak in favor, please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay. We will now hear from opponents of the proposal.
Opponents, please raise your hand. I see none.
I'll now hear from those with mutual testimony.
Please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay, and does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, thank you. All right, but with the clarification, does any member of the council have any further questions of staff? Good, okay. All right, if there are no further questions, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. The public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. We have now closed the hearing and must deliberate towards a decision. Our options are 1 of 3, to approve the amendments as proposed, to approve the amendments with changes, which my understanding would be because you did propose or we can debate the addition. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily remove option 1. Okay, thank you. Approve the amendments with changes or deny the amendments. When your name is called, please provide your thoughts on the proposed amendments and what decision you are inclined to make. I will continue going through the order until there are no further deliberations or until a motion is made. You will have the opportunity to respond or adjust your thoughts based on the testimony of your fellow councilors. So start with helping.
I'm partial to option 1, approval of amendments proposed by staff with the staff recommended change in 3.7.300K. Be comfortable with that.
Okay,
So I'm on option one.
okay. Council President, Riddle.
So I'm in favor of option 2, after, just a clarification with Matt today. I'd like to have the addition of the defensible space standards added to chapter 2.16 airport district of the development code, so it would just be one more chapter addressing it in the same manner.
Okay. Council Ross.
Yeah, I'm okay with either one or two, with your suggestion of two. I'll speak to the 8-inch DBH discussion we had briefly previously. I think that we have to bear in mind what we as a city wish to see, both through our urban forestry board, through our significant tree preservation, the ability of citizens to designate a tree as a significant tree and have it follow property through time.
The heritage tree
The
program.
Heritage Tree Program, and so I think that, at least at this point in time, I'm comfortable with the 8-inch DBH or greater, with the appropriate amount of pruning and limbing up, assuming that the tree itself would take that kind of change. Because I think that it flies in face of some of the other things that we're trying to do as a city, and I know that it increases the risk. I understand that, but again, the kind of trees we're probably talking about are gonna be ponderosas in this town that have had that kind of a significant DBH and pruned up high. Unless we get a crowning fire, in which case all bets are off anyway. I'm comfortable with it.
If it's a blue spruce, it's out, right?
It's not the way that the code's written, my understanding. And trees grow with 8-inch DBH.
Right, exactly.
0.4 DBH.
I understand that. I understand. I'm willing to take that particular risk. I think that it's part of the. Well, it's part of the city, and I think that trees do grow and they do get bigger, and yes, I understand that might be a causal problem. I mean, we just changed our significant tree ordinance to increase the fines when a tree is taken down of a significant size when we're next to a building in a development. That caused us to have that discussion, and here we are now in another part of our discussion saying, well, yeah, then I guess it's okay. So I get concerned that we're talking out of both sides of our mouths on this particular issue. One with we wanting to protect trees that are significant, and one with saying, well, if this was 5 feet of a house, it's got to come down anyway. So I'm comfortable with the language as it's written at this point in time. And I don't think it's going to apply to that many trees as it is. And if they're pruned up, I'm willing to take that as an acceptable risk.
Would you feel? Go ahead.
My understanding is that if it's a prohibited tree, that it's gone, but even if it's 8-inch DBH, is that correct? So,
Now, which section is this written in? Recommendations, however, I know that there were places in here where we did. I'm trying to find the wording, but, there are, we can we can write, this is the rule, nothing was 0 to 5, but then we can say, there are. I don't want the exception codified, but I want the ability to come have a discussion. Whether it's the city staff or the forestry board, I'm willing to bend on that. Does that make sense? I'm trying to find, there's places in here where.
Yeah, so is the exception section at the end of section 3.7.
How far into the package is it?
It's exhibit C,
Okay,
section 3.7.600. So if, as you contemplated, you could consider requiring
600.
all vegetation, including significant trees. And we could just strike that portion of allowing significant trees within the 5 feet. And then rely on exceptions for those special circumstances. So that would capture the blue spruce situation within the 5 feet. But it would allow for consideration of you have a larger pine tree within the 5 feet that's fully mature, 24-inch diameter that you want to see preserved, and because of its condition, its location, your building materials that you're using, the design of it, that you can provide a safe environment and while preserving that tree within the 5 feet. So we can handle that under the exception criteria. There would be a separate review process or a review process, land use type 2 review process.
Would there have to be for that?
There would be for an exception.
Yeah, I think that, I still am concerned about the significant trees that are what we consider to be community. The trees on ponderosas in particular is what I'm thinking about. Those are the ones we most often think when we think big trees and big diameter. But also allow for the removal of those trees that are highly flammable and dangerous to the trees above them, because they're going to flare up pretty big into the understory. And so I don't know how we do that in the exceptions, but without somebody looking at the code and saying, well, I gotta cut everything down that's within 5 feet, regardless of what it is. And we have some that will want to do that because they don't want that tree next to the property because it makes it harder to sell a lot. And we've seen that, so.
Can I read the exception, 3.7.600 E?
Yep.
Combustible materials may be permitted within 5 feet of the structure when the community development director, in consultation with the fire code official, has determined the portion of the structure adjoining the combustible material is constructed with ignition risk building material sufficient to reduce the spread of fire from the combustible material. So I assume that would include an 8-inch or bigger ponderous pine, right? As long as it's not right next to a window, maybe, I don't know. Is that a good enough exception read for you, or? I mean.
Not with the language that's above removal of 8-inch of the DBH. I mean, if we keep in the.
No, we strike out that part and just allow section E, the exception. To be.
So you remove the language about 8-inch or greater DBH, you just take that, goes away.
Right, and your recourse is to go to E and say, hey, look, we love this tree, it's on russet pine. It's right next to the house, but it's all, cement board siding, and there's no window near it. Then you could be accepted.
Is there a way in that particular part of the code that we're referring to the ones with the diagrams that you submitted? In that particular area to say all vegetation within so long needs to get removed. For a list of exceptions, see section 3.7.600 section E. So people know to look there. Because not everybody reads every page of the code, except maybe planners.
We can certainly provide a reference, and perhaps that is at the
end of it.
So, within the code, we're looking at a total of, the next page after the defensible space code standards that we're talking about. If you're wanting to provide additional reference, could consider including it in the introductory statement of 7.3.300B.
Okay.
That says that these standards all apply except as allowed under exception.
I'm comfortable with that, just so that it's there in front of people. I don't wanna have. I mean, I don't want to go up to their enforcement what they thought, but I loved it, but I don't want to be there with somebody comes in and says, so they just cut down a 24-inch tree. Over in X development. Because your code said they had to do it. Because that's what the code said, code said I had to do it. So I don't know how we get around that, but I've seen the unhappiness when the big trees come down, even when they're dead, we have unhappy people. And so just trying to think about how the code applies to the citizen who lives across the street. Or down the street, who drives by there every day, who has a house somewhere on that meter. And so that's where my thought process is going. I don't have an answer, but certainly having that at the top, so people know there's an exception section at the bottom. I mean, builders will probably know to look at that, but the average citizen might not. Especially if they're adding their 200 square foot deck. That now invokes the code. They may not look that far down.
So, I'm looking at 3.7.300. B4. So combustible, man-made and natural materials, including but not limited to bark, mulch, stored wood, and accumulation of dry leaves and needles are prohibited within 5 feet of a new building, addition or deck. Could we also include there, just including any trees listed in the flammable tree list? Sorry, trying to reference too many documents.
Yeah, and it's I think our discussion is kind of highlighting, there's one issue I want to bring up later, but since we're doing the prohibited plan separately. Yeah, I think we need to keep that conversation separate, but yeah, but I think this is starting to highlight an issue there.
Basically, what I'm trying to propose is that we add whatever flammable trees that do end up on our plant list, that we prohibit those from being within 5 feet of a new building.
Well, and the industry standard is really prohibiting them in 30 feet. Which this allows as well. And also allows prohibited shrubs to be within 30 feet as well. If they're already existing, so it's very kind of confusing. And it's not really sticking to the,
Well,
the science.
this applies to new development and new construction. And when it is evoked on existing property when changes are made. And I know it doesn't conform 100% to the industry standards, and sometimes we build roads that don't conform to the industry standards because that's the best way to do with it in the neighborhood. We do other things as a city to make those compromises for livability reasons, etc. Now, having said that, maybe I'm a little more jaundiced because I know I'm going to lose my house because of my neighbor's house, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Well,
Except maybe take the chainsaw when the flames start and just let them yell at me afterwards. But I think that I still have thought about the months and months and months of discussion we had in the Urban Forestry Board about significant trees and their value to the city. And the DBH was the standard that was used there above. And now we have a part of the code that's saying, but ignore that. And I think that I have a real concern that we've already had one citizens group work very hard on this. We've gone out to the community, we said, these are the things we're gonna do, and now we have code that's saying, yeah, but. And so that's my concern, is the inconsistencies. I understand your reasoning totally, 100%, I don't think I don't. But I just really want to be sure that we have an ability for someone in there to say, I will do what needs to be done to save that tree. And if that means I've got to get somebody in here and limit up 30 feet or 20 feet, I'll do that.
I feel like we're having maybe a couple conversations. So here, I just want to clarify, are you, when you're talking about the 8-inch DBH trees?
The 5-foot zone.
5-foot zone, are you talking also about trees that would be on the prohibited flammable list?
Well, I think that that's really the,
That's
that's really the
right.
second half of the discussion is that, in my mind, I was thinking, I was being very broken to think about it. And that's really the discussion in the urban forestry board and other things. And I don't think we have very many trees in this town to get to more than an 8-inch DBH that's not a ponderosa. Well, you may have some spruces and some firs. And junipers, yes, but those couldn't be pruned up enough because they're generally short ones. So I don't have an answer, but I guess the exceptions list is the best we can do, but I'm just worried about some developer clear cutting every piece of land when they're putting houses 5 feet apart.
That's why I think we might have two topics, but I'm actually. My stance is that I am fine with 8-inch DBH trees within 5 feet of the house. But I'm not okay with flammable trees. That's where I am, so I don't think, I think we need to kind of. Talk about both those pieces. That makes sense.
Is the ponderosa pine on the prohibited list? When it just says pine, does that include ponderosa?
As drafted, it would be included on the prohibited plant list. When we were talking about implementing the municipal space standards.
I think we have a discussion later on that issue.
Yes.
Yeah, so we can.
I'm open, like I said, I could do, I'm like with you, Gary, I could do option 1 or option 2. Option 1 is with the staff recommended piece. Option 2 is with the staff recommended piece and the airport district ban. And I could go for that right now.
Okay.
We have a good discussion about the other thing.
And maybe where it's an 8-inch DBH you add, if not on the prohibited tree list. And that may be sufficient to solve that problem with junipers, and I don't know, I'm looking at you. I'm also listening to my cohort over here on the side who may have a different opinion, and I respect that.
So I think if we could include a provision that that allows for the preservation of significant trees, not on the prohibited plant.
Does that make our fire professionals uncomfortable?
It does not for me.
Well, the list itself is for future consideration.
Right, I
understand
understand that, but
I mean, if it's influencing your decision on that particular topic.
Yeah, just want to note that we have that separate part.
Right.
You know, it is known that ponderosa pines are especially when they get to mature size, they do have fire resistant properties.
The biggest problem
Within
in
the trunk, they're light water users, etc. So they are, you know, even in the fire resistant plant guide, they make acknowledgement that yes, we want these conifers to be away from structures, but recognizes that ponderosa pine and western larch do have fire resistant properties when they're mature.
All right, I like it. Do you have more comments?
No, but I didn't pick 1, 2, or 3 yet, so just to add my,
Sure.
that's on that. I'm good with number 2 with Councilor McDougall's changes and the understanding that if somebody was to add an addition or a deck, that these defensible space standards would only apply to that addition space, that dwelling, around that dwelling that was added, which is what you confirmed.
Okay, well, I'm, at option 3 right now. I think we're very close to the finish line, but I think there's some really key things in here that aren't, serving our community the best of way they can. I'm reading a lot of things in here where. We are proposing a prohibited flammable plant list next up on the agenda, and then there was. Frequent mention of. If these exist, X, Y, and Z, and it's like, but they are prohibited, like. It's a very mixed message. And it's, it's kind of, and it's not really clear in here in the text, is this was. We talking about 0 to 5 or 0 to 30 or 30 to 100. But it's prohibited is prohibited in my opinion, especially the 0 to 30. And I don't think there should be any exceptions. I mean, especially for shrubs and things like that, because it's, we have, fire influences structures multiple ways. It's, it can be 30 feet away from your house, but if it's shooting up a bunch of embers that then flying into your venting or anything like that, your house catches on fire. It can also be, but obviously, things right against your structure, if you set your structure on fire, because it's right next to your structure, so. Having to think about these in all the different ways that the fire influences and impacts the structure, and obviously there's the weaknesses of windows and eaves and roof vents and foundation vents, open doors, things like that, so. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it the way it's written. I think we're very close. But I think there's too many loopholes in here. And it's turning into Swiss cheese. And Swiss cheese is what gets people killed. And too many people have died. And I don't want that to happen here. And so this is development code. This isn't gonna change anything tomorrow, but this is building a community for our future, and I'm taking this really seriously, so. That's where I'm at, and I don't want to drag this process out by any means. I would really like to get this done and implemented more, I think more than anybody out here. But I feel like there's some issues in here that are kind of conflicting with the science with IBHS. With NFPA, so I really want it to be in step with that. Remember, we're also trying to match this code, especially IBHS, because in hopes that the insurance industry will recognize our community in our efforts. When they see our code, and we can point that to that. When we keep getting our insurance yanked out from underneath us, so that's kind of a Hail Mary. We don't know if that's will work or not, but that's the best that we've got right now. We can't build affordable housing if we don't have insurance. And we don't want to build affordable houses that are going to burn down for our vulnerable populations, so. That's all for me. And I would just request that, we deny it and, ask for some revisions and see it in front of us again very soon with those revisions.
Point of clarification. Ordinances require on the first reading, 100%, do they not? Unanimous vote?
Yeah,
Or is
I'd
that
like
just-
to come back for a second.
I'd like to come back for a second. So I would feel comfortable with taking a vote on this. Much as I was uncomfortable with this, the things where I voted no, and I have in the past. And on both times, but I maybe putting this. I think that rather than denying it as a group. We can each vote what we think is acceptable. And you certainly have the ability to vote for option 3, and I think that's very accurate and fair. I have no problems with that. And then that refers it back. But it also shows that there is council support for what's going on and work that's happened. And that we're looking for some clarification. And I think that makes, I'm comfortable with that more so than the entire council voting negative against this, because it sends a message that we're not in favor of what's in front of us. And I think what we're asking for is changes in clarification, but not throwing this up.
Exactly. That makes sense to me.
And with that in mind, I would,
We can bring back a package of text some revisions without having moved forward with the vote tonight on the ordinance. Yeah, you don't have to, close the public hearing or keep it open, keep the record open. I would suggest maybe closing it,
That's true, I forgot that.
Yeah, and then we can,
It's been 6 months.
we can come back, another workshop, or come back with more, from the changes that were discussed tonight, yeah. Fine,
But I would,
to move
I
this
would,
forward next.
Mayor Les, I think this needs to be, hate to do this to you guys, but this needs to be. Right at the top of the list, and we should, if we have to adjust agendas, put this back on, we need to do so. I don't want to let it go down the road for 2 months, 3 months. I think that there's some legitimate questions and some will get answered and some won't. The nature, the ugliness of the process. We're making sausage, and so I'm comfortable with kicking the can down to the next meeting.
And I'm hearing, there is some concern and confusion on some of these issues from others as well. I mean, I'm really not trying to, push this, but I'm feeling like, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but,
I think what I'd like, it feels like tonight is not the right night to end this. So I'm comfortable with that. What would be really helpful to me is whatever changes, Mayor, if you have specific items. If, you won't have discussions for or anything, but if that could just be laid out so that when we come back to discussion, we know specifically what it is that we're talking about that's new, that would be really helpful. Does that make sense?
Question, if there were sections that she's concerned about or someone else concerned about, is it okay to send a list of these are the areas that I would like to discuss at our next meeting, or does that still constitute?
Send them to staff.
Send them to staff, there you go, perfect. Yeah, I like that. I just wonder how we might know what areas are of concern to me or to Jennifer.
But staff can relay those back to all
Yes.
of us and say, here's what these minor changes are.
Yeah,
Whatever they are.
that's what I.
In red.
That we do this legally, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And yet I also don't think the best place to have our discovery necessarily is in the meeting. The second meeting, not the first one, but the second meeting, finding the person.
yeah. Okay, so we're going off script here, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Option 4.
option 4. To just, what do I want to say? Take a list.
We just close the.
Yeah,
hearing.
close the hearing, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, close the hearing and continue to the convenience.
Yeah.
It's not in the script.
Right, we already did close the hearing.
Yeah.
The testimony, right?
We're on deliberation.
But close the continuation of the hearing, we closed the public testimony portion, but we did not close the hearing.
So if you would like to close the written and oral portion of the hearing and return for deliberations on date yet undecided. Is that
Let's say
meet
that,
your criteria?
You need to date certain or re-advertise.
April 23rd?
April 26th, what I want to see.
I know.
You were already meeting that day, but something else going that day.
Did that day.
We can make it work. Is roundabout art and book art is.
Oh, yes.
On there, also there, it's not an over there meeting.
Roundabout.
Hopefully the DCSO IGA is on that meeting. The Main Avenue building presentation, C4C, so there's some things that.
Dang.
We might be able to move around to.
It's still be done by 11.
We'll just bring our sleeping bags. Yeah.
We can identify that, just.
Yes.
Thinking about steps, we can identify that date, and if we determine that there's more work necessary to refine this, then we cancel that and then reschedule.
Okay. All right, so tell me what I need to say there.
We need a motion to close the public and oral testimony.
I move to close the public and oral testimony at this time.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second, me to roll
And
call.
and I think we would like in the motion the date that we're returning.
Okay,
April.
and the,
And return to deliberation on April 23rd, modify my motion.
We call return to deliberations on April 23rd.
I think that was the day.
Okay, so we need a roll call vote on that, or all right, all those in favor, say aye.
Boy,
Aye.
I,
Okay. Thank you again for your hard work, and we're almost there.
yeah, and
All this,
you should know by now that we love to tweak that.
Appreciate the attention to it and the interest in getting it right.
And thank you for your input.
that's it, you know, we don't. More people to go back and open it back up and then the. Or the. Remember this, when we're talking about short-term rentals.
So do we go past the resolution?
All right, we're back to resolution 2052 with Matt Martin.
We thought you were done.
I mean, is that, are you past that?
This one's easier though. Just-
Sorry.
Yes, it is on that, yes, well, it's a separate resolution.
Yeah, so we can, if there's some things we need to
I think this might
have
have to.
adjusted.
Yeah.
Welcome to discussion on this item tonight, but I would recommend not doing anything with the resolution until the ordinance.
Okay, resolution 2025-2 prohibited flammable plant list, Matt Martin. Staff report.
So as introduced in the prior agenda item, but for those that, you know, participated in that, so the ordinance 543 is code amendments to the sister development code that apply to the physical space provisions for new development here in the cities of sisters. Included is adoption of a defined prohibited flammable plant list, where have specific standards of where those can be located on the property and how they're maintained. Included is a specific list that was developed in conjunction with a variety of resources. Those adopted recommendations or species adopted by City of Ashland, known to be in a different ecosystem, so it needed to be refined and specific to our area, but also look to the OSU extension fire resistant landscape plants and other resources produced here locally. And so through those efforts and consultation with OSU extension staff, developed the list that's before you for consideration by adoption of a resolution. So those are my comments and otherwise supported by our discussion previously.
All right, thank you. All right, so time for council discussion. I think we kind of highlighted that, probably a need. I'll propose a need to add honors of pine. I mean, to exempt, thank you. That makes the word, exempt honors of pine for prohibited trees. I would also suggest, Western March. Those two trees are kind of mentioned in the OSU list as well. They both share kind of similar properties. But those really are the only two. That I would like to exempt from underneath the bullet point pines. Anybody have any comments or changes?
Procedurally, how does that work? You know, what we're trying to do with those two particular.
Yeah.
I mean, it says pine, should we say pine except for ponderosa?
Yeah, so it would include an exception listed separately or right behind here, so.
Of those two species.
After the scientific name,
Okay.
we would say except for ponderosa pine and western.
So we're adding a little section to this.
Yes, an extension to that bullet point.
I just want to make sure I get what we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I heard the two species, I just want to know, how's it gonna look?
And that would be all we need to do at this point, because we're not going to adopt it
Yeah, we'll bring back that change
until after the
next meeting.
next meeting.
Sorry, so is the large? You see my tree knowledge here.
I will have to do research as I'm limited in my species understanding, but we could
When
confirm.
it's sideways, it's called a lurch.
But I understand the intent and will ensure that it's either accepted specifically or we know that it's not included.
Okay.
I do want to point out, and I'm not sure, so I know there was some, maybe not full clarity in the other document, that you might have been looking for, Mayor Lutz, but I'm looking at this, seeing that this species, this list of species will not be allowed within 30 feet of any structure. So I think maybe you're looking for the 30 feet reference in the other document also, which, you know, would be a good clarification. But it looks like it's also been addressed in this list. And I forgotten that.
Would be prohibited with new plantings.
New plantings.
And, yeah,
So that's just a summary, but then we refer back to the actual code provisions.
and one more reason they take ponderosis off the list is that we're planting a whole bunch of them on Arbor Day across the street. That has not been lost.
Yeah.
You know, 30 feet in right.
Yeah, just
Until something gets built on the Oliver Leonard property.
Well, yeah, and so I'm a little now confused, I mean, thank you for bringing this up, but because it doesn't outright say that these are new plantings.
This is just the list. Referring back to the defensible space.
Okay. All right, I got it, okay. I thought it was
Which is, yeah, part of your question or comment about removing all listed species within 30 feet.
Yeah, and I mean, I do have some. I do have some issue with the grasses, I mean, obviously. Nobody wants cheap grass, is fine, you know, there's. Things like, you know, Carl Forster, bunch grasses like that, ornamental bunch grasses can be. Really flammable as well when they're dried out. And I know there are a lot of places they aren't allowed. And I shouldn't say they shouldn't be here either, though I'm trying to, be sensitive to the points that you were bringing up, just food for thought, but,
you know, we're gonna have a couple of weeks to add that,
yeah,
so.
we're not doing anything.
Yeah, I have got a real problem with some of the ornamental grasses. At least being moved back away from structures, I mean, they're gonna probably flame up and. I've seen wheat fields burn and it's not pretty, and I imagine some of those ornamental grasses burn like the wheat field with cinders just flying right across. Fortune way ahead of it, so. But I have no experience.
Maybe if anybody else has any ideas to add to the list,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just bring it up, I guess.
Yes, I think that would be the way to do it.
Okay,
People are gonna vote on it.
right, okay.
Again, similar, just make sure everybody else knows what changes are before it comes to us, so we can talk about it as well.
As you consider this list in the coming weeks, thinking about how not only the species, but how they would be applied within the defensible space. So what comes to mind is Councilor Ross, as you mentioned, a wheat field fire. Well, we wouldn't theoretically, we wouldn't have those conditions, not the wheat,
I
but
know
we have separation. The bunch
Right,
grasses would
exactly.
be separated a particular distance that's been identified as protective measure between the,
Yes.
to limit
Well
that
said.
spread across those particular plants.
Okay. So,
Um,
we're gonna do it, yeah, I know.
On number 2,
Yeah.
Do I need a motion, to, no motion, anything.
our motion resolutions, no problem.
Okay,
We'll bring it back.
but we will bring it back, we need a day or we'll just, okay. Yeah.
It will be the same date.
Okay.
Just because
That's
package
deal.
deal, but procedurally, not a public hearing.
All right. All right.
Don't run for the building screaming yet.
All right, don't cry yourself to sleep.
It actually was a very good job, it's just so you know.
I did want to say that I noticed this time that you seem more comfortable than ever, and you did a great job today. And I even mentioned it to the city manager already. Appreciate it. So, honestly, good job.
You
But
better
you
sit
put
down
on
with
with
us.
us.
Yeah, thank you for putting up with us.
We consider it a hearing of the gentleman behind us.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Next up is resolution 2025-03, city council goals. Jordan Wheeler.
Hello, want some action on this?
Let's debate. Okay, I'll leave it again.
I'm ready to punt again.
Please, Steve.
Well, here are your 2025-26 city council goals, so, this is the bringing back of the latest round of edits, I think it was back in. Last month that we, followed up to the city council's workshop, a half-day workshop on setting goals, and there was a few, suggested changes, and requests for some wording and additions, so we've incorporated those into the goals. You know, I don't think I need to highlight a lot of these other than, you know, continue to focus on the wildfire mitigation, the housing and livability, and affordable housing goals. You know, the good governance, economic development, and all those projects that we have slated for essential infrastructure. We're up to 4 pages on goals now, so the only thing to highlight now is the next step that we've already started working on is starting to put cost to these in terms of building into our budget, so that we be prepared to present that as part of the proposed budget on how we're required to implement these goals in the next fiscal year. So that will be a big feature of the budget presentations. But hopefully, yeah, we'll be able to adopt these goals tonight, so we can proceed with that plan. But also welcome any other changes or suggestions as you have tonight.
I personally read that through and compared it to our conversation, and matched up very well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to add a goal, like the goal is only 3 pages.
And I'd like to add a goal that the mayor can make any comments about trees and movement.
So we'll change the type, the font size to an A.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I move to approve resolution 2025-3.
Yes, perfect.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yay.
We got goals.
Thank you.
Now,
And thank you to all of the staff for helping with that.
Actually, I want you to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
now how badly can we screw up the masterpiece?
I don't think I was forced by the.
All right, renaming East Portal, Scott Woodford, Community Development Director,
No,
or
we're
Joe
good.
O'Neill.
Masterpiece statement.
That's gonna be, oh, sorry, I checked it out.
It's not,
B,
it's not on here.
No, it is.
Oh, D.
Oh,
I'm gonna stand up if that's okay. It won't take long.
public hearing for resolution 2025. That's your, all right.
So we have to open the public
Rockets.
hearing?
Yeah,
you gotta open the.
well, I mean, out of courtesy.
All right.
Go back to your script.
Same script?
Same
No.
script.
No, it's.
Nope.
I don't know.
Just open the public.
Okay, open public hearing.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So this shouldn't take very long. And we often notice that we do master fee schedule updates typically towards the end of the calendar year and the end of the fiscal year. So this is kind of an anomaly. The reason for that is this pertains to public events. And in the forthcoming public event season, this would be enacted. So that's the main reason why we did that. And so the overall summary of this basically is, staff was evaluating fees for public events and more specifically transient merchant fees. Now remember, transient merchant fees as part of a public event is a little different than the license. So we're just talking about the fees as it pertains to public events. Now for public events that are the same name and that repeat, the $20 fee kind of continued throughout those same events. And so obviously that's a little bit redundant that we recognized, and so we wanted to address that. And we wanted to kind of evaluate the fees so that the event promoter still, acknowledged that they were renting, the park or what have you. And then they were also kind of assessing the vendors that they had, make sure they were still in compliance, so give them a little skin in the game still. So we came up with a $10 fee for a repeat vendor at a kind of a continual event, if you will, with the same name. So you get $20 per vendor for the first event, and then every subsequent event would be $10 per vendor. And so for the events that do have this kind of condition of use, that'd be about a $6,000 effect to the overall events fees for the general.
And the primary user of this sort of would probably be the market.
Yeah, exactly, and that's not to say that another
Oh, yeah,
event
no,
promoter
of course
couldn't do
not.
the same, but yes, that would pertain to the farmers market at this point, yeah.
This is annual on a traditional calendar or,
So this will be effective right away.
well, no, but it's,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The farmer's market has a vendor, they show up, they pay the $20 the first week, right, and then every subsequent week they pay $10. Does the next June, when the farmer's market opens again, do they start with the 20 and then go 10, or?
Good question, I would say yes, it typically goes within a calendar cycle,
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be like the 2025 farmers market and then the 2026 farmers market, so it's gonna be.
Yeah, in effect it is, right, even though we do look at them as kind of separate events to an extent, but yeah, it kind of does recycle at the beginning of the calendar year, but that is a great observation. And so that's really kind of the change of the fee and its simplicity.
Okay, I like it, I mean, it was something that was kind of brought to city's attention.
Yeah, it was,
And I think this is I feel it's a really great solution between the community and
I think it's fair.
city, yeah.
And I know we lose a little revenue, but the reality is we gain a lot by having these folks come back time after time after time.
Agreed.
Moving business into the downtown area, and also just a better experience for our visitors and our residents too.
So a vendor that sells at the farmer's market and then also sells at the harvest fair.
Mm-hmm.
Would they be a repeat vendor for?
It's not in the same event, so it would be another $20 charge, if it was under the harvest fair per se.
There was someone that's got a really big.
Yeah, because there's a chance that that vendor could be selling something else, and so.
Well, and I think it's important too, so that we don't have someone say, well, that vendor was here, so they can.
The administration of tracking all that, yeah, would be a little bit difficult. But for the but for your point, for the harvest fair, it would just be $20.
Right.
And not subsequent $20 charges.
Yeah, because of all this.
It's just one, it's not per day or anything like that, it would just be the $20 flat charge for the harvest fair.
Unless they do non-consecutive days.
Consecutive events. So if harvest fair had another event.
Harvest fair part 2.
Right, then it would be a $10 charge.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors are gonna do a spring event. I heard. I'm happy.
We have a staff report, yeah, and we have public comment.
Public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. All right, I do want to see.
For the monster.
I don't think there's anybody left, but
Yeah, I knew that was.
I see none.
Eric, any comments?
All right, there are no public comments and we close the hearing. All right, council discussion, we continue. Is there any more discussion? Did you have?
I move to approve resolution 2025-04.
Second.
All right, I have a motion in a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for that.
Yeah. All right, now we name these portals, Scott Woodford.
You don't want to.
Yeah.
Wouldn't.
Are you on the prohibited species?
I think that was one of the choices.
It's 5 feet. So
Don't do that. You're the.
There was that one write-in vote on the public survey.
Yeah. I'm gonna do that.
All right, so as the liaison to the Parks Board, I guess I'm here to make this presentation, but I would also like to give a lot of credit to Rebecca. She really drove the process and handled it well, especially the first time out of the gate. So
We'd really like to see the chair of the Parks Board here instead.
we actually had a couple Parks Board members here earlier, but I don't think they were able to stay there.
I think you lost the majority of the tree
I
debate.
don't think they have the ability to stay, so. So what we're looking for tonight from the council is to, first, we're gonna review the Parks Board recommendation, but we're looking for the council to hopefully make a final determination on the official naming of the East Portal, which is, as you know, currently under construction as a mobility hub, as well as has some parking amenities, including the labyrinth, and then also it's a area designated for a dog park. So under resolution 2420 that was adopted last year, that kind of guided this process. We utilized that in this, and we leaned on the Parks Board obviously for their assistance. We met with them starting in December, met with them 5 times. The first one in December was basically just give an overview. Then in January we started in earnest with kind of a the brainstorming, I guess, of that. And then we fined it February 5th, and then we went out to the public for a survey. And then reconsidered those names on March 5th. And I wasn't at that meeting, but my understanding is that the Parks Board kind of had a little shift in how they perceived or the mobility hub or the transportation center. There was more than that. It was basically, in their mind, more of a park.
And I can add clarity to that when we get to that point.
I'm sorry.
And I can add clarity to that.
Okay, yeah. And so based on that, we decided to go up again to the public with another survey in March. And that generated 258 responses, which is pretty impressive. And out of that came the top vote getter was Sisters Gateway Park. With 63% of the votes, and the Stage Stop Park was second, 48 votes. So we took that back to the Parks Board, and they could have taken those recommendations, or they could have gone in a different route. They felt strongly about honoring that feedback that we got from the surveys, and chose Sisters Gateway Park as their first choice. And just reciting kind of the staff report, some of the reasons why they chose that. They like the word sisters in the name. They really like this site as a gateway for a lot of different reasons. And then it also ties in with some interpretive or artistic signage that's it's in the kiosk in the park currently. And then Stage Stop Park, they was chosen to honor Sisters Western Heritage, including the rodeo and the folk festival. They talked about it evoking a place to pause, rest, and explore local businesses. With Stop also suggesting or related to the transit use nature of the site, as well as reference to early pioneers who established the area by transporting the. So, Rebecca, did I miss
You hit
anything? Want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
I watched one of the meetings that you led, very nice.
Oh, thank you.
And I will say, consider this my staff report, when we get to that council board, that she did an excellent job of herding cats. I mean, the initial list was several pages long. And trying to vet it down into something that could go out for a vote. And the first vote was very inconclusive, nothing really popped up. So it came back to another, and the thing that they struggled with the most was trying to work transportation hub, mobility hub into the name. And they struggled with mobility as a word excessively, even to the last one, because many of them, it denoted folks that are alter-abled as opposed to transit. It has so many different meanings in our vocabulary now. So that one kind of dropped out, and I encourage them to think of it as the citizen, this is for our citizens and for our visitors. And so I did encourage them to think about it as a park as well as a transportation location. And so once they started thinking that way, you know, then it became, well, what's it gonna be called? And residents will probably call it Gateway Park. Like we call Cliff Lemons, you know, or we call first, you know, it'll have a name and it'll be used. And I think that by having the word park in there, I think they felt very strongly that it involves the citizenry, invites them to go there. If the name was Transit Hub, then the person over here living on this side of town might go, why would I even need to go there? And we wanted it to be a public amenity as well as transportation amenity, because I think the more we bring our residents into it personally, and this was a big discussion we had, the more people would use the transit, which is our goal. And so I think that the name, whether you pick one or the other, is fine. I think the committee would be okay with that as well. They mainly settled on Gateway because it got most of the votes. And they were trying to honor the public process. There were some people who still wanted a different name, but that's what they came up with. So it was a good process. It worked well. Rebecca handled it well. And it's our first iteration of this naming policy we put together, and it worked. So kudos to the staff and this group that worked to put that together. Gary, yeah, I said staff, but yeah.
Is this a discussion part?
He was kind of doing a little bit of a staff report because you were there,
Yeah.
but we can.
Go to this, I'm done. So I just wanted you to know how they arrived at these, and that it was not arbitrary. There was a lot of thought going into it. And I will add one more thing. Everybody felt pretty strongly you could have Sisters Gateway Park and Transportation Center, Sisters Gateway Park and Transit. You could add those words in if you wanted to. And certainly could be on the signage of it.
I had a couple of points. One, Sisters Gateway Park, I think is great. Gateway means portal, so we're just changing that name a little bit. I mean, Sisters is in it. It's a park. I think it's great. Point number 2 is I'd love to have one of those giant arches that went over 20 that said welcome to Sisters. And that's Gateway Park is like a place for it, right? Just one of those massive things. You go in there, it says welcome to Sisters. And that's kind of Gateway too. So think about it. I don't know. That's my idea. And I'm voting for this thing. So I'm done.
No comment, ready to vote.
I move to adopt the name.
What?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm down with Gateway.
I'll just say I really like the addition of park because you're right, this is how we always envisioned it, and I don't know how you even thought of it, let's just call it a park because it's so much more inviting, it's a park with a transit center in it.
Yeah.
It's not a transit center, it's a park with a transit.
And I have to say, thank you, Gary. I think that was mostly your idea.
Yeah, we got him over the hump.
Yeah, just put them on track.
Yeah, no, that's great, so yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Can I do it now?
Yes.
Okay, I move to adopt the name Sisters Gateway Park for the property currently referred to as East Portal.
A second, I have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right, so we name that. Now,
We need something.
first person who says East Portal and then buys everybody else, right?
Okay.
All right, we're on to other business, response to prior meeting public comments. So we are,
There were no questions. Peter Gruber made a public comment, and I have been meeting with Peter about the grant agreements for portable workforce housing.
Students here are here too. but stay on the-
This pumpkin ride.
okay, thank you, staff comment.
All right, keep going here. Just a couple reminders. We have the wildfire preparedness event that the mayor will talk about on Sunday. That's a C4C event in coordination with other community groups. And April 16th, we have the wildfire preparedness fair at the fire hall, which will have a presence there as well. Last week, the Sisters Community Partnership for Houselessness. So someday will be renamed to something more official, but partners, we met again. We're meeting on a monthly basis now. We continue to make progress on the action plan. Something to note though is that there's a subgroup now working towards scheduling another community meeting.
Still in the thunder, Jordan.
I'm sorry, I will leave that.
Please.
Next, quick, another wildfire update. I mentioned this in the joint meeting, this afternoon with the school board, but Senate Bill 83 did pass out of, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Wildfire. It has bipartisan support. It looks like, the map will likely, very likely be repealed.
It's gonna go up in flames.
It's gonna go up in flames. There was 9 amendments to that bill, so that's proceeding, and you know, we're continuing to take our own steps here. And we're talking already about the building hardening code and moving that forward. We've been busy with the budget process. Thank you to Joe's, you know, the mastermind behind all the numbers, and also the department heads on working on their budget. So that's underway. So this next month is kind of crunch time for all that and getting the numbers in. Interesting time to budget, just in terms of forecasting things for tourism and consumer spending and things like that. But overall, things are stable, and as you've seen with the quarterly updates, our financials are strong going into the next fiscal year. And then speaking of that, we are continue to finalize the proposed update to the contract with the Shutes County Sheriff's Office, which is a big budget driver for us. That might be one item that does get pushed off the 23rd to the next meeting, which, you know, ideally, we would have that conversation with council before we go into the budget, since it is a big budget item. But, you know, we've talked about this before with presentations with Lieutenant Davis, you know, in terms of, you know, it's an update to a contract that's 5 years old. So there will be cost escalations based off inflation and cost of living adjustments for deputies and things like that. So it will be an increase, but we're, you know, working together well on negotiating this contract. Hopefully have something that we can bring to you really soon. No staff come up, Carrie provides some updates to share on maybe art? No? Okay. That's coming up on the next meeting for the roundabout art that did close in terms of the public voting. Over 600 people submitted votes on those 2 finalists that are in the City Hall lobby right now. I think over 100 students at the high school.
Close to 180 students.
180 students. Yeah.
About half the school.
Yeah, so great participation. You know, Carrie put in a letter to the Nugget this week to kind of thank the community for the participation, the process that we've been going through, and with this assistance on the RFP committee that helped us on the technical side. So that will be coming to the Urban Renewal Board on April 3rd for a conversation there. We're also planning hopefully to have a conversation that evening on public art in general. As a council to explore that public art program here. So hopefully we'll retain that, although we're working on shuffling things around now with the schedule. Joe, I kind of gave the update for Joe on the budget. He's knee deep in that, but also staff have been taking in you know, the reservations and things on campground because it is now open. We actually have had a few people already.
You had 2 campers the first night?
We did, which I think it snowed on April Fool's Day.
You
Right?
did. I mean, they were in there at about 3, well, by noon, there was one rig, and none, it was later in the evening. Yeah, they got a Crocker Sisters welcome on April 1st.
Yeah, so first come, first serve.
There were about 6 or 7 in there today when I walked by.
Yeah, it's already happening there. Scott, anything update tonight? No, UGB, so one of the update to share on planning side would be, we're looking to schedule that next meeting with the planning commission, city council on the preferred alternative. And one of the decision point there was when to schedule that in light of the recent application, which had a hearing with the hearings officer on Monday. The written record is held open though for the next few weeks with the rebuttal period, and so the final written argument is not until May 12th, and so the decision will come after that. So we're trying to find the right timing then to have probably a joint meeting with the planning commission just to use the best use of time. There's still a steering committee meeting scheduled for the end of April, right? So we'll still have some unanswered questions at the end of April, but hopefully by the middle of May, we should have a decision. Fingers crossed on the hearings on the rezone application. That being said, we're still have, you know, 2 preferred alternative scenarios that we're working on with either the rezone property included as scenario B or whatever we can have with the numbering there. And then the other preferred alternative was scenario A over here. So we'll try to pin down that date for you. I know it's gonna be a busy month because we do have the budget hearing and other things going on. And we have the events going on right now this month with fire stuff. So we'll try to figure that out. I think there's a planning commission meeting on May 15th. That really shoot for eventually. Yeah, so I know there may be conflicts and things, so let us know. I'll send something out to you about it, but I know it was already the May 1st day that I see conflicts on that date that doesn't work. Paul, do you want to do updates? You want me to? We got Barclay happening. Yeah, come on up, man.
Would love to.
All right.
I saw a shovel over there the other day. It's a shovel.
So I think just real quick, I don't want to rain on the Portal Park naming parade, but we have a grant from ODOT to pay for all the mobility hub improvements. And only mobility hub improvements, no park improvements. So let's get through that grant, get it signed off, and then we can start calling it Sisters Gateway Park and Transit Hub. I just want to be careful of that.
Yeah, and we had that.
Especially in the press.
Yeah.
So with that, we're getting close to wrapping that up. So mid-May, we're looking to have. Basically, we'll have everything done. I think we'll be a little bit late on getting the tall parking lot light posts, but everything else should be done. So we'll be asking for pretty much full reimbursements at that time. McKinney Butte corridor improvements done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. And Barclay, we started today or yesterday. That's going to be a pretty quick construction cycle from what they told us. I think they're a little ambitious. I think we're going to be hopefully just getting it done before the end of the fiscal year is what I'm like worst case scenario. So they're saying mid-May. I'm like, that's pretty quick. So we'll see how we'll keep up on that.
That's a big difference.
It's a couple weeks. Weather can screw that up. West Side Pump Station went to bid today. And bids close May 14th. So with that said, our initial cost estimate coming from the engineer after everything is done, 100% design, came back quite a bit higher than what we had anticipated in the master plan, about $500,000. I'm looking favorably for a good bidding environment. I've been getting questions from the contractor community on that project. And then, you know, there's people are putting some tariff contingencies and the suppliers, pump suppliers, control suppliers, pipe suppliers, all that. So that added into that engineer's cost estimate going up. I think Joe and I strategized, we're going to wait to plug that number into the budget until we actually see the number in mid-May. So with that, overlay project is, we got signed contracts for that. Have not got a schedule on that. As soon as we do, we will let you know. That'll be the spring. And then we completed the well 1 design. We're going to bid that in midsummer for a fall construction. So we're not taking that well offline during the fire season. So that's all I have.
Quick question, Paul, related to your initial comment. If we were to refer to it colloquially for now as these Sisters Transportation hub at Gateway Park, is that gonna be a problem?
I think you're fine doing exactly what you did.
Okay,
Let's just not make the sign yet.
yes, well, of course, yeah.
No problem. We'll get the mobility hub improvements done and then we'll go do the park improvements.
Well, and like I said, another park improvements are separately funded and
Have to be.
have to be, and that's
100%.
very clear, and I
Yeah.
think that, like I said, I'm hopeful that by having our residents there, we'll have more users of it that live in this community. As opposed.
I just want to make sure ODOT is
Yeah,
understanding how we're thinking.
thank
Yeah,
you.
well, the park's land around it and the mobility does.
They're investing almost $1 million in that mobility. hub,
Yes,
so
and
we need
it's
to respect that.
looking real good.
Yeah, it's looking great. Okay, thanks.
All right, the staff comments, counselor comments. Sarah, you wanna go? Yeah.
Sure, Jordan started talking about our, we lead into the, I'm still unsure the House's partnership group name, but we did meet last week and we're very close to having a plan that would be ready to share, and, there are tasks on the list that would be for the city, but, and we'll review those, when the list is done, but they're very much in alignment with our council goals for the year. And then I will be meeting with a smaller group next week to talk about how we are going to approach the next community conversation, so I think that's really positive. To take a look at where we've been in the last several months, I think there's been a lot of action and we're getting ready to plan for the future, and I think as we start looking at any kind of code changes, it's good to get community input on the front end. Get some discussions going so that we can I don't know, address concerns up front. Last week I visited Oasis Village in Redmond with a small group from FCLI. They were just going and I thought, well, I might as well go along and see it. Really interesting, though it is on county and city land, which we do not have open land like that here, but it was an interesting visit. I am getting ready to schedule a visit to see the safe parking that's done by Mountain View Community Church in Redmond. I think Eric Strobel wanted to go on that trip, and if there's another counselor that would like to go on that visit with me, just let me know. And I've been attending, I just started attending the PWAC meetings, and as you can hear from Paul, they are like rock and roll team of the century, with the number of topics we keep up with, so and it's being very professionally juggled, so thank you.
Really the only thing that I did over the last 3 weeks, the biggest thing was the Cocoa Days, and that was great. I had some forethought and I took my kid with me so she could have about as good a civics lesson that you can get by going to the state capitol, finding out that it's been under construction for 5 years and supposedly done this fall, which means it'll be done in 2029. But you know, obviously represented the region, Coco, you were on vacation, so and you know, it was fun. I've done it 3 years run, 4 year run, something like that. Got to meet some of the more influential people more than ever, and I think it was representative, her name's Cruz, but I'm not sure, and she was the majority co-chair of Ways and Means, and she came to talk to us face to face instead of sending the staffer, which Doug Wicks, the lobbyist, said, oh yeah, the staffer's gonna be here anytime, and she walked in the door herself and was actually very interested in the juniper removal project to store water, and that was interesting because you know, she comes from a place where, you know, preservation is very important on her side, and that's great that she had some time to listen to us talk about, hey, sometimes we're moving a tree. It's not what we want, we don't like to, but if you can bring a spring back and give it some junipers. Apparently the juniper program over the last year, they removed 4 times the amount of acreage of junipers with the money that they thought they were going to be able to. So it's been a really good program. Water is getting restored in some places that hadn't seen springs come out of the ground in 100 years, so. And there's papers to show it, so that's always good. It was really fun, I have a few photos if you want to see them, and every photo that my kid is in, she's like really interested, and I was kind of surprised by that. She actually surprised me a lot by being focused and listening and asking questions, and she ended up being the Central Oregon Youth Representative of our group, so that was pretty fun. So yeah, thanks for letting me go, and that was you know, I just think that the stronger our regional presence is, Open from Salem is a good thing, and I think that the way we're growing, I think the activists, we're gonna, you know, we need infrastructure, we need collaboration on water, we need, you know, we can't do it by ourselves.
So did that get scheduled by the state? Or did that get scheduled?
Coco.
So it might be worth having a discussion with Coco about avoiding spring break week, putting that schedule or something like that, because I'm sure there were other folks that may have had conflicts with.
Yeah, I mean, I could have had a conflict too, we just happened to pick different weeks that we were gone, I was gone the second
Our
week.
2 weeks spring break, so.
It really screws everybody
It's
up.
kind of right at the beginning of that first week, which I think.
Yeah, and honestly, you know, getting space in the Capitol where they kind of gave us a conference room most of the day. We got kicked out at lunch for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we came back, and so.
Did they leave you food?
We had we brought our own food, so, and people ate our food after we left it there, you know what I mean, so. No, that's a juggle, trying to get legislators to agree to meet on certain days right in the middle of a long session. So we get it worked out really good. We were well represented. I think Redmond overdid it. We brought 6 people. So the city of Redmond brought everybody. But you know, they have you know, applications in for new water, and they have Core 3, which is really the biggest topic. Because that's what they need that to happen. We all need that. That's a region-wide project that you know, a lot of people don't know. Core 3 is gonna be the emergency center for the governor during Cascadia. Everybody's coming over here.
Oh, yeah.
To get out of there.
I've known that from when I did emergency response in the valley.
I think-
We said,
I think
we're all
that-
going to Central Oregon.
Yeah, and I think that's not well known publicly, but I mean, we're gonna be the emergency center if a big event happens.
Redmond
And we
Airport is, so I'll be based on Redmond Airport.
And we need the correct facilities, and the infrastructure is already went in and being paid for, so why there's any talk about not funding Core 3 is kind of idiotic, because they're already putting in, they already have the money and the roads going in this year. So why would you stonewall the rest of the project when you're spending that much money to start it? So anyway, that was my one big thing. I did a couple little things, but nothing to mention. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing that.
It was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody could go, when that was, we're eventually nobody could go, and.
Right.
So you were so experienced, it's perfect.
And I thought it involved hot chocolate, so I can't have it. So
We did.
Cheryl?
Okay, just real quick, because we haven't met for a while, I was part of the Civic Leadership Academy application review and selection. And the candidates were fantastic, and Kellen from C4C guided us through the process pretty quickly, and we got it done, and looking forward, that starts Monday,
Good
right,
progress.
Carrie? Yeah, Monday.
That's fast.
Yeah, we've got some very young people in there, got a high schooler. Which was pretty exciting, see how it goes. Anyway, so that was that, and then attended COIC. The meeting reviewed the business loan program that's out there. I also thank them for allowing Merv to come and visit us, and thanks everybody for coming out to see that. And we'll see how this goes. Hopefully we'll have some success on this trial basis with the mobile employment resource van. All right, so finally, this Sisters Senior Living Facility and the loss of our assisted living services there. I think about Albert Einstein, who said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. I don't want this to just be something that we just move on from and forget about. And I did some research. I spoke with Department of Human Services, Kim Hector, who actually is assigned to monitor the transition plan that the Sisters Senior Living Facility is going through. They are following everything fine, they're getting through all the residents as far as transition, so it's going well within the laws of our state, which, or should I say, lack of laws in our state to protect our golden age citizens. So I would just like to see us do a little bit more in this case. There lacks quite a bit of laws around the assisted living rentals, if you will. They don't have their landlord tenant rights that are standard in Oregon extended to them, as was shared to us by Ed Owens, one of our citizens. And my research confirmed that. I also researched that this is a problem across the nation, that these assisted living facilities are giving up their licenses. And there is legislation being pushed through in South Carolina, very similar, to give a notice, max or minimum amount of time notice to the residents to allow them to transition. It's very hard to change when you're older. It affects people physically, mentally, financially. I experienced it myself with my mother. So my request, if you will, is for us to consider writing to our representative and senator, and or, as Michael shared, thank you, Michael, talking to our lobbyists through COCO, Doug Riggs, on just to please look at the legislation that is missing, if you will, or look at extending some of those landlord tenant rights. I looked at the South Carolina bill. It is proposing a maximum or minimum of 90 days notice to the residents if the facility is closing. Right now we've got 60 days, which is less than what a standard tenant gets in the city of Portland. City of Portland, you get 90 days and the landlord pays you 1 month rent to cover your transition expenses. And then also looking at notification for rent increases. People who stay in assisted living, there's 2 fees. They've got their rent and board, and they've got their care fees. That rent and board, when it's increased facility wide, there's no minimum notification on that. There's no cap on that, and there's no limit to the number of times they increase that on our books, on our laws. So I'll just open that for discussion, see what you guys, if you have any input on that, and whether we think we could ask for our staff to draft something that we could send or discuss with Doug, perhaps. But I'd really like to see us do a little bit more on this.
Yeah, I think we should talk to Doug. I mean, it'd be great if we could do something locally and say, hey, here in the Sisters, we're not gonna allow that. Now, I don't know how realistic that is, to be honest with you, because that's that's getting into places of law. I have no idea. I don't know if any staff even have much idea about that, other than it's gonna be a big lift. So I think talking to Doug and trying to affect the future, I think that affecting this particular, I think we've just about lost the battle already without even knowing there was a battle. I mean, it was kind of over before it began. So if we can affect the future in some way, and if we can use our small city charm and our name recognition to, headline the push, I'm all for that.
Cheryl, I appreciate you doing the research and putting that together. I agree with you that this is an area that needs a lot of improvement. And I don't know the better route, but I'm behind whether you want to go through a lobbyist or you want to go through our own our local representatives in this case. So.
Personally, I'd do both. I think doing nothing is not an option. You have nothing to lose by talking to the lobbyists. You also have nothing to lose by sending a message to our local representatives saying, this is something that we think needs to be done. Standard landlord tenant rights need to be the same rights that go to an individual who's in the senior living center as a renter should go to the individual next door to them that's in the senior living center as an assisted individual. And so I suspect that there are reasons why it's not there. It may have something to do with the lobbyists at the time this stuff came in or whatever. I think that I prefer to see this at a state level as opposed to a city level, because I think that if you do it at a city level, it may be difficult to bring somebody in, provide services for the only place that requires that. And maybe it's not accurate, but it just that popped in my head. But I think this is, if it's a problem for us, it's a problem everywhere else in the state. And I think we maybe could be the push that gets the ball rolling down to him.
I think that, we can probably both be interested in hearing about it, whether anything could happen this cycle, I think it's probably not gonna happen, because the ball's already coming down the hill.
Yeah.
And trying to slam on somewhere that doesn't work very well, if at all.
Did you look in to see if any of the 3,000 bills that were proposed address this at all, or?
I did not, but when I spoke with Kim at Department of Human Services, she was under the impression, she confirmed that my findings. And she did not give me any reason to believe that was changing our current laws are just what they are, and nothing's being pushed through addressing this.
Maybe talking to Doug.
Yeah, why don't I do an email to both you and Doug to introduce you guys, just an email and let you guys talk about it. I mean, you're spearheading it, you've already got the information, so why don't I do that? As a member of COCO, you're more than welcome to come to the next COCO meeting and bring it up at that time too, right? So, I mean, it's not just, I mean, it's assigned to the mayor, and I'm still in the water subcommittee, but that doesn't mean you as an interested party on this council can't come to a COCO meeting. Anybody can, anytime, if they have something that they feel that they want to put in front of COCO to try and get regional support.
We need to figure out a way to put it on the governor's housing bill as a rider.
Well, we can take it to a door, you know what I mean? I mean, I
They
think that's
approve the
the
bill and then it's kind of hidden down in
Yeah.
her. Guess what else you approved?
Yeah.
Because it
Housing.
yeah,
But the good thing about Doug is he's a professional lobbyist. He does this for a living and he knows who to talk to, who might be interested and all that stuff. And that's his strength. And that's the reason that Coco's work. He actually helped start Coco and he created himself a lifelong job, which I think tells you how he thinks. He's a central Oregon guy, went to Redmond High School, the room we meet in at Redmond City Hall. He was there in 8th grade doing geometry or whatever, so.
part of his annual does.
So would that work for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that, thank you.
I think it's a good idea. Thank you for taking the lead on that.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for all I have on that. Is that it? Okay, I go. Thanks.
You use
I'd
all
like
your
to- I'd
time
like
up, you use all your time up on the public hearing.
I'd like to congratulate Sister Parks and Rec for opening up the new community center and with the ribbon cutting.
The rest of us were there.
Yeah, the rest of us were there, which is great. And so congratulations to our new neighbors. And our public service campus over here.
Looks great.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we were interrupting people's workout classes, like it was already functioning. They counselor coffee this week. And we had three people come here for the coffee, so that was good. A couple of usual suspects, one other person. And then the next month will be at the barn. Evening?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. May 6th.
I'm not jealous, I would.
Yes, C4C is hosting the first of 2 wildfire forums. I'll be speaking at the one. For the angle of what the city is doing in regards to wildfires Sunday 4 to 6 at the elementary school. Firstly, just, we're gonna talk about the defensive space code, but also, lots of questions about, especially after the LA fire, like, well, how many fire hydrants do you want to, how much water do we have, so Paul has given me lots of stats to share with people as these questions come up.
I want to make it, graduating.
Your wedding?
No,
Yeah.
no,
Finally getting married.
I'll be at a wedding, but otherwise I wish.
Okay, well, there's a second one on
Yes.
May 18th for St. Helen's Day. That will focus on insurance. So anybody who's got insurance questions, we're gonna ask them to hold on to them and bring them 3 weeks later to the next one, so. I have that to look forward to as well,
What's the date of the second part?
May 18th. We were invited to the regional interagency incident tabletop exercise. Which is badly timed right before our next meeting, April 23rd. It's gonna be at Redmond's fairgrounds, and I can forward you more information about that. You know, we're really great, glad to have an invitation. Jordan and I talked a little bit about it, is like, oh, we're kind of hoping that we can get something a little bit more. Just this corner of the county with our partners, a little more intimate, more specific to our direct agencies that we work with, so we'll keep having that conversation with our partners in regards to that. But it's a good start. I attended the Bynum town hall on Saturday. It was well attended, and yeah, the high school was a nice venue, good host. A lot of good questions, and she engaged the crowd well, I think, and.
What was the grade before? I mean,
Oh, that's right, thank you, that was the more important part. Yeah, there was, she had a short meeting with, community leaders. From the area and her district over here, or even. A couple people from Lopine came, you know, they're not her district, but they wanted to come and talk to, so that was great of them to show up. And it was good, you know, she was just kind of like, what's on people's minds, so I said wildfire, and you know, just kind of highlighting that, you know, we're doing what we can, but dollars really help. And get us over the finish line, we're, you know, we're doing as much as we can, but you know, it's the dollars for this. For any projects, you know, things like that.
Pay the rangers, stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, from the agencies, for us, for people, you know, in their own homes to do the work, that's kind of, there's little pots of money out there, but you know, that's. Federally, that would be great to have more help there. Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to go. I was in the valley and didn't get back in time to be able to attend it. I met her and I like her, and I think it would have been nice to have been able to be in. I didn't realize we were gonna have the elected officials sort of little side component, which was really pretty good. So, and I think they probably had a better meeting without the senator there, because I mean, it gave them more time to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
And you'll do a whole separate meeting, so we'll do round 3, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, it'd be great if you wanted to do it with sisters. There were a lot of people in sisters that day, and I was hoping they were spending some money, so. Something, we'll talk about it later. About that, tomorrow is the Tri-County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee Summit. Event at the Parks and Rec headquarters, so we got invites. I will say that from our last VPAC meeting, one interesting thing though is that. ODOT has gotten funding and has put out an RFP right now for a consultant to look at a very high level preliminary look at how to connect Sisters, Redmond and Ben's through a trail system. And so kind of a exciting opportunity again. I think, you know, it's gonna be a high level, but you know, they have the money to do it. They're gonna move forward with that, the consultant to take a look at that, so.
So the county get involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, we, you know, we lobbied hard to make sure that those trails concepts were kept in the TSP, and so this is kind of the fruition of that, the county's TSP, so. So that's kind of exciting to think about again. It'll be very interesting, I think, but obviously there's some hurdles in that. Well. Or help it.
10-foot asphalt path, you know, to interrupt these giant elk that can jump across the whole road.
And I'll leave it at that.
Cool.
Mr. Ross.
No, I just chuckling. I think it's had memories of a discussion about path between sisters. I mean, we've been to something else for a while. Close. None, I thought, just the meeting that happened, with the parks board. Again, lots of kudos to staff, because I think we didn't think it was gonna be like a 1 or 2 time meeting, and that group. They went right to the wire every day too, so. That's it.
All right. Well, I will adjourn this meeting. You made it. Are you taking bets?
You're taking bets?
I saw.
They had a,